can. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah.
Waalaikumsalam.
Wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa mawalah. Amma ba'du. Honorable Professor Mansur Ibrahim, who will be also our resource person today. Dr. Emil Hidayat, Director of Islamic Economy Supporting Ecosystem, (IKS), and also welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's workshop. It is basically our 9th workshop. Yeah. My name is Muhammad Iqbal Irfani. I am a lecturer at IPB University, the same as Professor Emir's alma mater. I will host and moderate today's workshop, which is basically our 9th workshop of our workshop series. Today we will have a session of feedback for participants, draft 1, right? So, yeah, and Alhamdulillah we have a very credible and reputable resource person. He is Professor Mansur Ibrahim, who is also a professor and deputy president, academic and dean at the International Center for Education in Islamic Finance in SIF. But before we start our workshop, it's very good and important for us to do, I think, to start with dua. Hopefully we can get a new insight and practical skills in our workshop. And also the most important thing is, may Allah give us blessing, barakah, yeah, with dua. Let's start with dua. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Next agenda is opening session that will be delivered from Dr. Sultan Emil Hidayat. As I mentioned, he is Director of Islamic Economy Supporting Ecosystem, (IKS). Pak Emil, time is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Iqbal, Muhammad Iqbal Irfani. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alhamdulillah. Salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah, amma ba'd. Rabbi syrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. The Honorable Professor Dr. Mansur Ibrahim, our mentor, our guru from the International Center for Education in Islamic Finance in SIF, Malaysia. Representative from co-organizer from UIN Syarif Hidayatullah, Jakarta, from University of Indonesia, from IPB University, as well as the representative from IAEI Jakarta chapter, and all participants, selected participants, as well as regular or general participants, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, let us praise Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, the most merciful and the most compassionate, who has given us the chance to attend virtually this workshop. This is series number 9, and inshallah, all of us will get the blessing from him, inshallah. And peace be upon our Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, our greatest role model, and who has brought us the Dinul Islam to show us the correct way, inshallah, to enter the paradise. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank the participants who are consistent or who are consistently attending this workshop and committed to do all the tasks given by Professor Dr. Mansur Ibrahim. And of course, I would like to thank Professor as our mentor. My highest appreciation goes to you, Prof, because you already spare your time, your valuable time, and share your invaluable knowledge to all the participants here in Indonesia. I hope the participant can get benefits from your expertise, given your credential, as we are aware that Professor Mansur is among the top 2% of the economies in the world. So therefore, I really feel that this opportunity should be used properly, and this is a very rare opportunity. So that's why we need to take this opportunity as seriously, for especially for those who are selected to attend this workshop. As we know that today we are already in the nine series. Yeah, we will discuss about the sum up feedback for the participants draft 1. For all selected participants, please again, use this opportunity to learn as much as you can from Professor Mansur. And again, without I will never be bored to remind and all the participants. We ask your full commitment to do your best during this workshop, this session, including to complete all the tasks given by the Professor Mansur. If you are, let's say, lacking behind now, please speed up and do all the tasks. And we are still waiting. Yeah, the organizers are still waiting. Yeah, all of the organizers are waiting for your first draft if you haven't submitted yet. And of course, if you have submitted, then inshallah soon Professor Mansur will give you his feedback. And then, for your information, we still have one more workshop series, which is the last one, the 10 series. Inshallah, it will be held next week, inshallah, on Wednesday, 24th November 2021. So I really hope that you don't miss this chance, because our plan is for the selected participant to submit at least in a reputable journal. Lastly, I do hope all of you will have a productive dialogue, and you keep your spirit, enthusiasm in attending this workshop. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of us. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Pak Emil, for the opening speech. And now I think we should move to our main agenda, our workshop. But just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any question during the presentation, I think just you can also type them into question box in your chat room. And I think you can also perhaps say, Professor, how we manage the question and A. It is just raise hand in the middle or at the end of the your feedback or something.
Okay. Try to be interactive as possible. I think you may raise hands or you may stop me. And try to be informal as possible. Doesn't have to wait up until the end.
Okay, thanks. I think it is more interactive. For you, you can also type but I think it's recommended to just raise your hand, and I will permit you to the participant to just ask Professor Mansur to comment something and so on. I think just next to our main agenda, and without further ado, we will turn to the time for to Professor Mansur for the feedback. Thanks. Time is yours, Professor Mansur.
Okay, thank you to Mr. Iqbal and Pak Imer. Thanks a lot for opening up these sessions, and we are closing to the final sessions, and which will be held next week, right? And where in these two sessions, I will try to provide feedbacks with what have been given to me, and so far I have received few, but then only up until research methods and data. Right? So I will focus more in today's sessions on research methods. give you feedback. I have not sent the PowerPoint to Bu Nadia yet, but then if there's need, I will send the PowerPoint because the feedback is very specific to what has been submitted as we are going to go through the articles, right? And hopefully the article that I will discuss, we have the authors or the writers attending this one, but then I may pick up some of you, and then we can discuss in terms of feedback and what do you mean in terms of what you have written, so that you can take a look and have basically the first hand on my comments of what you have written, right? So that's what I would do for today's sessions, right? And there are a few articles. I think I have 11 articles and quite interesting. Okay? And that when I read through this article, it forced me to search journal articles which are not in my own area. The reasons I would like to see and I would like to read how people discuss the methods that you have used, and those methods I have not used before. Right? So I just want to see how people discuss and try to look at how you discuss. Right? So more or less try to learn from the journals, and then try to use that learning that I have in a short time from the journals, and try to make assessments of what you have written, right? So try to give feedback from what I have read. So let me share your screen because I would like to give you first general's feedback related to what we have discussed, right? General feedback related to what we have discussed. Writing empirical papers for Scopus Journal. I'll provide you in general first, and then we are going to go through article by articles. I will take volunteer whose articles would like to be put on the spotlight for us to discuss, because I have gone through almost all those articles and have seen what you have written in the methods sessions. Right? Now, what I would do in this case, basically, when I look at the articles that have been submitted to me, right, I classify those articles into two groups. Right? And the first groups use data gathered through survey and questionnaire, which means that they have primary data. Right? They collect data through survey and questionnaire, right? And then mostly in these groups of papers, they apply quantitative methods mainly or mostly in almost all articles. I think in 5 out of 7 articles, if I'm not mistaken, we are going to look at those articles later on. They apply PLS, SEM to address the research objective. PLS, SEM to address the research objective. And I think, and that's why I mentioned to you at the beginning, right? It forced me to basically download articles that apply PLS, SEM. I will show you the article that I have downloaded so that you can see in terms of the way that people write on PLS, SEM, right? And try to compare with what you have been written, right? Now, my comments or my feedback may be direct, maybe blunt, right, at the end, but then just take that as basically advice, not criticisms, because at the end, we would like to get feedback and improve our work, right? And sometimes I think some of you have presented the articles, right? The articles in conferences, right? And normally being Asians or being Malaysians or being Indonesians, we are quite nice in telling that the articles are good and so on, while in fact the articles are not good, right? But when people start saying that the articles are good, but it's not good, then it's not good for you. Right? The reason being, you have no room to improve the articles. And just people say that not because of the articles are good, but because our culture, right? We do not want to offend anyone. We do not want to say bad thing, but this is not about saying bad thing, but then it's about giving feedback, right? So that we can improve. And that one very important part. And this reality of getting direct and basically negative sometimes comments is something that you are going to face when you submit to the journals. And in fact, the word that they use may be we may not be expected in terms of how negative when they do not like the articles, right? So I will give you quite direct at the end because I would like you to look at and evaluate our own works objectively, and everyone here can learn from each other, right? There's nothing to be ashamed of, right? By having someone saying that your article is not good yet, for example, right? This article must be, or this write up must be totally overhauled. You have to start new. So there's nothing wrong in that, right? So the group one of the article, as I mentioned, apply quantitative methods and mainly partial least square structure equation modeling to address research objective. And I will share the number of articles there, right? And group number 2, they apply published data, right? And basically secondary data from official sources, except one article, if I'm not mistaken, one variable in that article, published data based on a survey that they give to the banks regarding e-banking adoptions. Right? So they ask the bank to provide the answer regarding e-banking adoptions. Right? So and in this case, right, here you have the second groups, and basically they use I classify them as using secondary data, right? And then they adopt econometric methods. Of course, econometric method is also quantitative methods, right? Because there are many different quantitative methods out there, and econometrics is one of them, right? And they use econometric, which means regressions analysis, right? Where they have dependent variables, independent variables, and to address the research questions, right? So those are two groups of the articles, right? And as I mentioned, I will provide more on data and methods because I have not discussed yet with respect to data and methods, right? And let's look at these articles, right? For us to be able to as a background first, right? So that when we move to discussion of feedback, right, you know exactly what are those articles that we are going to discuss, right? So if I omit some of the articles that have been submitted by you, maybe I have not downloaded and put in my folder yet, right? Please notify me or resend me because I will take a look at. But then more or less after I have read 11 articles that has been submitted to me, that more or less the problems are the same, right? So basically, I would guess that if you have not submitted yet, or if you have not listed your articles here, just check against the feedback that I'm giving here, whether that feedback relevant to your work or not. But I would think that it would be relevant, right? Because I see the patterns in terms of what need to be improved when we write the methods and data sections, right? So I have a few. We look at from here, I have 4 that have stated explicitly that use PLS and SEM, right? And the first one, paper number 1, try to look into the impact of what the paper term as psychological factors on the default intentions. These are the default intentions in peer-to-peer lending during the time of COVID-19. So that paper number 1. Quite interesting. Look at intention to default, not default, but intention to default. and try to see how the psychological factors, right, affect those intentions. Right? And the second one, use explicitly state using PLS-SEM, right, is the articles related to fintechs and zakat participations. Right? Try to look at the impact of fintechs on zakat participations. Right? And again, using PLS and SEM. And this paper number 47. And paper 58, right, basically looking at social media influencer and how this social media influencer affects, right, halal cosmetic purchase intentions. So it's kind of more or less the same as paper number 1. The only thing is the variables are different. Both of them try to look at how they affect purchase intentions, right? And then we have paper 69. And when I read that article, kind of looking at the impact of hijrah intentions, right, on how, when these are from the objective, right, impact on some customers being loyal to Islamic Bank, and PLS SEM also had been stated explicitly, right, in those papers, right? And then I have article which use different methods, right? The one number 43, looking at accounting disclosure, and then have been mentioned in the article a little bit in context of size. So I'm not sure what exactly in terms of size. Maybe you try to look at whether the accounting disclosure regarding Wakaf, if not mistaken, and Baitul Mal, is related to the size of the entities that we are looking at, right? But then the method that has been listed is mean, median, and ANOVA. So this one we have to discuss later on if the writers are here, and if you want me to go into your methods and look at your objective and try to see, because at the end, right, when we look at the method, it must address the objective, right? And then I have the articles also that have not mentioned regarding the method, but I would guess that also will use SEM, or partial least square, is the one on Wakaf literacy, perception of cash Wakaf, and desire for cash Wakaf. These are 3 domain or 3 areas that you try to look at, that try to look at. What has been mentioned in the method just describe data will be collected through survey, and then just mention we apply SPSS, right, to analyze the data, right? So that's the only thing. But then applying SPSS to analyze data doesn't tell us the methods, what method, because SPSS can do a lot of things, including regressions analysis. So that paper number 43, right? And then I have paper number 63, which I'm not sure what method, because they have not been stated, right? But then looking at briefly, because the write-up has been very brief, right, in terms of the methods and data, but looking at what has been written up, it seemed to be also structural equation modeling, because I tried to look at a few articles that have used structural equation modeling and partial least square. And then they have the framework, or they call as conceptual models or theoretical models. Some call it as theoretical model. Explain first. And that paper, this paper number 63, had that elements. And in fact, they try to look at how human capital and halal affect halal awareness, and at the end, halal news, right? So that's basically paper number 63. So this belongs to group 1, right? And very interesting for me when I look at and I have to thanks to these writers. In fact, I have to appreciate these writers, because I think even from the first day, you're aware of the fact that I mentioned to you, I may not be able to give a lot of feedback if you are not using econometrics, because some other framework is not in my area of work. And I know I think when it comes to PLS SEM, I know less than you what PLS SEM means, right? But then still, your participations, you gave me up until this point, right? And try to get the feedback, which hopefully I can give in the context of writing, but not in context of whether the method is right or not right, because it's not in my area to provide you, but more of the context writing. But at the same time, with the interest that you have shown here in terms of writing the method and so on, as I mentioned, it basically encouraged me to read a few articles that have adopted PLS SEM, right? With the intention to understand, not to understand fully, but with the intention to look at the way that they put all the information together in the article when they adopt PLS SEM. How do they write, right? And I think I would say I'm not surprised with the finding in terms of when I read the article that used PLS SEM, that the elements that we have discussed, right, remain the same, whether you use PLS SEM or you use econometric methods. The element in section 3, which we term as data and methods, remain more or less the same. Right? So which means that what I have said before with respect to econometrics, regression analysis will be applicable here too. So I'm very happy to see the published article when I look at, right, is exactly the same. So which gives me a comfort little bit that I would be able to give you feedback when it comes to the write-up of PLS SEM in your work. I will show you some articles, right? But then before I show you some articles, let me go through general observations that I have with what you have written in the data and method sections, right? So 7 articles, and I have 11, right? I have 11, you have 7 here, right? I have 11, 7 out of 11 coming from primary data. So that's why I said I am a little bit surprised, because I expect more of writers, right, that's using published data and do econometric analysis. We'll try to submit more, because by the fact that I know more and can give better feedback, but then I have this group to have to be 7 out of 11, right? So kind of close to 70%, right? And I have 4 articles basically that use published data, right? Published data. I have 4 articles. These are group number 2, right? 4 articles. Sorry, I put the article number 9. All of them. I did not change, but not article number 9. But you know all your article by looking at the topics, right? So my apology, I didn't change. The first one, of course, article number 9, but in case, but I forgot to change the title article. I think paper 9, article 17, if I'm not mistaken, because these are articles by Nur Hidayah, which I remember because we discussed a lot on these articles, right? And some other articles here. These are by Sulaiman's, I know, and then we have technology diffusions, quite interesting, the one that I have discussed, right? And now you look at these articles. The first one, I try to look at how prepared Islamic business units, right, of regional development banks, right, in fulfilling the mandatory spin-off. And I think, if I'm not, I remember what I have read, this mandatory spin-off will take effect in 2023, right? If I'm not mistaken. So preparedness of Islamic business units of regional development banks. You try to look at how prepared they are, right? And then we have the second article, try to look at technology diffusions in Islamic banking in Indonesia, and basically focus on electronic banking, and try to see determinants of the adoptions of electronic banking, and using the framework which is panel logics. Right? So you have logic regressions, but then your data set is panel data set. So you have panel logic in there, right? And then we have articles that try to look at stability, performance, and innovations of course, the article used the title Sharia Bank, but I just put here Islamic bank and conventional banks during the pandemic, and then the paper adopts panel models, right? And then paper number 9, the digital financial inclusions and economic growth in OIC. I think the title is quite clear in terms of what the article tried to look at. And this one also used panel data, okay? So as I mentioned, these are 11 articles that I have gone through and divided into 2 groups. Group 1, primary data set, use mostly partial least square SEM, and group number 2, regressions, right? Regressions analysis, right? So rather than give feedback for each one of them, right? Then let me give you a general feedback first of all these 11 articles, right? All these 11 articles. Now, if we go back to what we have discussed on data and methods, right? And then based on what I have mentioned on Monday, the most important part, the first step in writing, right, is to gather the right informations or the required informations to put in the articles, right? And once you put in the articles and coming up with the first draft, the first revisions, I think I mentioned on Monday, would be on restructuring the information within the articles, right? So you gather information first, and then you restructure information. And after you restructure the information, then you go to the next step, looking at basically the writing, the grammatical errors, the spelling, the choice of words, the structure of sentences. So you go to step by step, right? And step by step. Now, when it comes to data and methods, I think we have discussed, but perhaps what I have discussed, I'm not summarized in the following way, in the sense that what do we need in the data and methods? The first thing, the process of data compilations and the constructions of your samples, right? You have to inform, you have to have information, data compilation and sample. There must be clear explanations on data gathering, how you gather the data. If you use published sources, right, where you get those sources from, right? And how you construct your sample, how you put and get this number of observations. So this must be clear, right? Data compilations and samples, these must be clear, right? And then you must be clear on the constructs, right? Why I use the constructs? I don't use the construct before because I read SEM, PLS paper. They refer the measurements of the variable as the constructs, right? They explain the constructs, and we roughly in econometric more or less definitions of the variables or how you measure the variable that you use in your models, right? Again, there must be clear explanations or definitions of the variable construct and measurements, and if possible, right, especially in the context of published data. Right? Because in the context of primary data, right, you construct based on your survey, and normally survey that you have there, how you construct the survey, you have reference, right? And then from that survey, you get information and you have your constructs, right? But in published data, maybe you use certain variables, sometimes you need references, right? For example, very simple, digital financial inclusions, right? How you measure them, how you construct it, right? And what you have constructed, what you have measured in terms of definition of financial inclusions, right? Do you refer to any other articles, right? You must refer to some article, even if you have differences, right? Because as I mentioned before, research means that you refer back to what we have done and try to improve, right? And try to make a new thing. You normally we do not in the blue, out of vacuum, come up with totally new thing. Right? We refer back to what we have done. So sometimes references are made, right? But this must be in your data and method sections. Right? You have constructs, you have measurements. You explain the construct, you have explained the measurements. Right? You have data compilation, you have sample, you have construct. And then you have to explain the models that you use, because quantitative methods, right? And all of the articles that have been submitted, that have gone through, all use quantitative methods, right? Either econometric models or partial least square SEM models, or even ANOVA methods, right? Or you mentioned SPSS, you analyze data, right? You collect the data from the survey, right? Because sometimes people have the wrong perception. When you take survey, become qualitative. No, survey doesn't mean qualitative. Survey is just a method of collecting data. How you analyze that data, right? So that one will be either qualitative or quantitative. And I would say that all articles are quantitative. So you have to explain your model that you use and how you estimate that models and how you come up with the results from the model that you have formulated, okay? And this must be written explicitly. An explanation must be made on how they address the research objective. Because when people look at the models, people want to know, based on that model, which part address the research objective, right? And SEM is quite clear, because the way they construct and so on, they go directly to the objective and construct the instruments, and based on the measurement that they have done and so on, they link to the outcome variables and so on. So it's quite clear. But in econometric regressions, it may not be clear, because you have to put your key variable, you have to put your independent variable. So you have to make it clear which part of your equation that you put in that will address your research objective, right? And they may be, and most likely, I would say, accompanied by proper references, right? You have to have references, right? Which means that you construct all these things based on who, because there are some you may adapt from some other works, right? Or you may say that you do on your own, but it seems to be similar to some other works that they have done, right? Or you build from other framework and modify it. So you must have references, right? And the intentions, let me remind you back when it comes to data and method, the intentions of writing and data and methods, right? If people read your sections on data and methods, and people say that, yes, I can replicate what has been done by you, right? If people say that to you, yes, I can replicate, it means that your write-up is clear, right? But if, for example, right, people look at and people have no idea on how to replicate because there are so many things not clear, or there are so many questions that can be raised, now the write-up is not good, right? So remember, one of the things that can make your article to be rejected is when your methods are flawed. And people will more likely to see your method to be flawed if you are not writing well, right? Where people cannot see exactly the process that you have gone through, right? Now, very important part that you have to note this, right? Data and methods tell people, you are telling people what you do, right? So it means that it is not something that you should not know, because these are what you do in research, step by step. I do this, which means you describe yourself, you describe your actions, right? You describe yourself, you describe your actions, you explain what you do from the first step up until the end, right? You come up with these models. So they describe your actions, right? Unlike in literature review, you have to read other people's work, you have to understand what people have done. And based on those things, you take notes and you try to synthesize everything. So that one, try to analyze what we have done. Data and method, try to explain what you exactly do, right? So that people can replicate. So that's the difference. So which means for me, when it comes to data and methods, the writing would be easier as compared to the introductions. Because introductions, you have to find very convincing motivations, right? to tell people that this topic is very important. We have to look at it because the answer has significance. You try to convince that this research objective is worthy of discussions, is worthy of investigations. When it comes to literature review, you must be able to read all other work that people have done and must be able to understand it, right? You must be able to understand it. So that, try to understand what you have done. But now data and method try to explain what you do step by step, right? And these are three basically sections, three sections that you must have in your data and method. So we are going to go and try to check against what you have written, whether you have all these three or not, right, in your data and methods. And in fact, all of you can check back what you have done. Have you explained well the way that you compile the data, the way that you construct samples, especially those who collect data through primary sources, right, which means through survey and questionnaire. Right? And then, do you explain well your constructs, how you measure them, right? And define them properly in text or in the sections, right? Do you give the models and estimations, and then explain how you estimate and explain why you use the methods that you use, right? What are the reasons? So these are basically what need to be in data and methods. Okay. Now let me give you feedback in general, so of what I feel, right? And this feedback, as I mentioned, is general feedback, right? General feedback, okay? And when I say general feedback, it may not apply to all articles because there are few articles that have provided whatever information that has been, that are needed, that whatever information is needed for this section. The only thing we have to restructure back, right? But that's the second stage after we get the first draft, right? The first draft have to see whether you have the right information that you put in or not, and then we can restructure, and then we can refine our writing in terms of English and so on, right? So basically we must be patient basically in terms of writing. Right? Do not rush, because go step by step, right? Go step by step. Now, when I look at all seven, but then it's quite, for me, as I mentioned to you, this section is not something difficult because we try to describe what we do. But then when we look at in general, the way that you have written is not well, right? Despite the fact that you just need to tell what you did, right? But then the way that has been written, but not all papers, as I said, in general, there are some, it's not well in terms of data and section methods, right? So I sat down a little bit last night and tried to think what went wrong, right? In terms, what might be the reasons, right? So that if we know the reasons why the write-up of data and method are not so well, right? It's not so well. When I say not so well, means that it doesn't have all the information that we need for that sessions. And if they have all information, it's not clear enough that someone else can replicate. And that's what we mean by not well. Of course, by degree, some have everything, right? And so on. But in general, but not apply to all papers because I have only 11. It's not so well, right? So I try to sit down what might be the reasons, right? So when I look at in terms of reason and try to make conclusions from what I have seen, these are, I put in the reasons here. It may be true, it may not be true. It's just my hypothesis right here. What are the reasons that the right thing is not well? What you have presented to me. But then for us to basically reassess ourselves, right? Making assessment of ourselves. Why we have not put in the right information in this section, try to explain. And what we try to explain, as I said, we try to explain what we did, right? What we did. Now, and reason number one, sometimes quite clear that you are stuck with the format that you learn for the term papers in class. Because I know that few of you are basically the articles here that you have, right? the articles that you have is part of your work in your study. For some of you, not for all, as I said, but I try to get the reason. And you start with the format. I think from the beginning, when we discuss on this thing, forget everything that you have learned on how to write before, right? On how you write before. Let's start new, right? Because why I say this? Because I still see that you mentioned, right? We use secondary data for the purpose. You use secondary data, right? And our research method is quantitative, right? Now, if you look at most journal articles, right, you don't need to tell because these are understandable, right? Remember, you are not writing for a person that start to learn statistics or start to learn data analysis. You are writing for the scholars out there, right? Which means you are writing for the journals. And who read the journals? Who read the journals? Your peers, other researchers, right? Other researchers, right? Or even if they are policymakers, they have the right knowledge to understand, enough knowledge to understand. So sometimes we don't need to tell, but still you use them. So normally I see this one in the basically statistic term paper or in undergraduate term paper, for example, when you say we use quantitative method, we compile secondary data. So we know that you compile secondary data because you mentioned the source where you get it from, right? But then because you start with that format, which I see most often in terms of when people try to explain, right? We use quantitative mixed method and so on, right? So basically there are certain elements there that you still stuck with the old format. Now you have to learn from the journal articles in your area on how they write, not to start with the format, because every universities have their own format for the term papers or for the project papers and so on. But that format may not be right for the journal articles. Right? That's one of the reasons that I can think of, right? And the second one, we have not read papers that use similar method, but I don't think that this is likely because researchers have to read, right? But perhaps you have not read from very good journals, right? You may have read, but not from very good journals. And that's why when you try to borrow from them on how they write and so on, right? When you write from not good journal as your reference, right? Your writing also will be at that quality, at that level. So that what I think, right? Or if you have read, right? You have not paid attention to the writing of the authors of that journals, articles. Right? You have not seen how they put things together so that you can learn on how you should put things together in the data and method sections. Maybe that what I hypothesize, right? And reason number 4, that maybe you submit to me last minute, like 2-3 days before submission, or we have to submit, then you just write quickly and without looking at what elements that are needed there. Maybe these are one of the reasons. I'm not sure you know yourself, right, in terms of the feed, in terms of what you have given to me, right? And reason number 5, maybe this is the first time you use the methods, right? You are new in terms of research, and then this is the first time learning, and you just put in there, not so sure yet what the methods, you don't have a deep understanding about the methods. And that's why the explanations also is not deep, it's not detailed enough. This also might be the reasons, right? Or the reason may be you do not really understand what we have gone through before. Maybe that also might be the reasons. My explanation may not be good enough or may not be clear enough, or if clear, you may not be able to understand, but you don't ask. So these are some reasons that try to put in and try to understand. Because once we know the reasons, then we can make correction of the reasons. Because some reasons are acceptable. Right? These are the first time you try to write. For example, reason number 7, you are new in writing, right? Especially for academic journal. Right? Some of you may be new and you start to learn, but that's a good thing. You are starting to learn and you try to put things and you get all the weaknesses and so on. But that's okay, that's fine, perfectly fine. Why? Because we are going to go through and try to improve step by step, right? And the most important thing that I have to stress here is basically for us to be persistent, try to improve, try to reassess ourselves and try to improve, right? And that's what I've seen. So those are the reasons that I put in, right? And I'm not sure whether I've given you, because we have been so many times, right? Because I'm not sure whether I narrated the cases of Bill Gates, the Beatles before or not, right? They are not good, not because they are super genius. They are good because they are working hard, consistently, right? Spend hours and hours, right, on the task that they do, right? So that's why they are extremely good, right? And if you look at the story of Bill Gates, for example, he sneaked into the lab of a university because his house close to university. I forgot, University of Michigan, so I'm not sure. I have to go back. But in one university is close to his house that have mainframe computers there, a big computer lab with mainframe. Imagine 30 or 40 years before, he sneaked every night and spent hours and hours in the computers learning coding and so on. Right? So that's why he became good. Right? The Beatles, before he became famous, right? The group of Beatles basically got the task to perform, right? Hours and hours with low peak, right? Before they got famous, with the low peak, right? So which means that they train hours and hours. And for us, if we are new, don't be disheartened with the feedback that I gave you, right? But then if your reason number 4, you have to be worried, right? Because these are not basically the characteristic of researcher. We do not do it last minute, but we do it bit by bit, but persistently. Right? Build up bit by bit and persistently. And this is one very important part, right? Okay, so and then number 3 is something we build ourselves up as researcher. When we read, we analyze our reading, right? Or the writing that we have read. We start analyzing not only in terms of the information content of the article, but also the way the article is structured and so on. We have to start to learn. And this is the build up of ourselves as researchers, right? So these are the reasons that I can think of, right? When it comes to basically based on general observations, because the write-up are not good because it doesn't meet all these 3 elements. You have that, but may not complete, and some totally miss. No models given, for example, right? No model at all given. So I'm not sure how you address your research objective, right? Because there's no clarity in the context of what you have written, right? What you have written. Now, I mentioned to you that I have gone through a few articles that use PLS SEM. I have gone through articles just to try to understand myself on how they have written those articles, right? How they have written those articles. Now, I would like to share with you a few articles that I have downloaded just to see just to share with you my finding, right? My findings that I have, right? When I look at those articles, try to look at whether the elements that I have mentioned are also in this type of article that use PLS and SEM. So let me share the article first, and then I will go through your right one by one. And we have a lot of time today. You don't have to worry. We have 11 articles we need to go through. And I think we should be able to cover all articles, and I should be able to provide the feedback, starting from the general feedback, looking at whether the information is sufficient or not. And if you have more things to look at, then we can try to restructure. Now, for me, really easy. If these are the first time you're writing for the journal articles, and when we say journal article is corpus journal that are of the high rank, right? You have been written before, but not for the Scopus, right? For example, maybe for some local journals and so on. That's okay, it's part of training. All of us start in that way. Myself, I start in that way too, publish for Malaysian journal and so on. But now we are focusing on Scopus journal and so on. Maybe just follow the format or the structure that we have discussed in class, right? And then once you are comfortable with what we have learned with the basic format, later on, as I mentioned before, you can start your own new style of writing, right? Once you become comfortable, right? And that one very important part. So let me share with you some of the articles, right? And hopefully I can share all the articles. I just basically download the articles, right? Just download the article, various articles with respect to basically the one that use PLS SEM. And I hope you see these are articles because the methods are the same, only the topics are different, right? So sometimes the explanation can be used, the one they have done. Of course, you cannot borrow directly from them because the topics are different. You have to adapt them. You have to rewrite them in the context of your own work. Right? And this article tried to look at the drivers of sustainable manufacturing practices. Right? What drives sustainable manufacturing practices? Right? And then how this impact on the competitiveness. You look at it's more or less related to what you have done. Right? Some of you look at the WACAF literacy index, right? And WACAF intentions and awareness. You have 2 or 3 things, construct that you try to link them together. Right? So more or less these are the same, right? But then the topic are different. So I scanned through these articles, right, just to share with you. I scanned through these articles, right, and what I see, they have a lot in terms of all elements are more or less the same as what we have discussed. Right? I scanned through this article. What I found out here is that after they have research objective, right, all articles have will have hypothesis and so on, right? And they have research method here, right? And they explain, right? They explain there are 3 steps of the research because they explain what exactly that they are doing, right? They explain what are the first steps, right? The first step, design, basically survey instruments, right? Survey instruments. That's what they mentioned, right? And then the instrument was sent to a stratified random sample of managers. So we know that the managers is the subject of the study. And these are managers of wide spectrum of SME, right? So first they design, right? And then they send the survey, and the method of data collection that they have used is stratified random sampling. Right? So these are type of things that you need to understand. And based on this, we understand that the population are managers of wide spectrum, which means a long list of SME. They send that. And then when they get responses, basically they validate the response by relevant statistical tests to ensure adequacy for further analysis. So this is the first step that they have done. Right? Validate the survey first. So they mentioned, and in almost articles they have this. They have this. They address your hypothesis. Right? Your hypothesis here. Okay, your hypothesis. So they have this conceptual model in there. Right? And some of you have this, which I'm happy to see. You have conceptual model because these are the model that will be basically analyzed, and you are going to put numbers there. The result of the estimation using PLS SEM. Right? So in all articles, I see this. And then I see the discussions on how they discuss the instruments. Right? The instrument, how they discuss in detail. You look at in detail. You can take a look at what information that they put in here, right? To measure each instruments that are needed to run this, right? For example, organizational driver, what they look at, technology driver, what they look at, right? So these are related to the survey questionnaire. Of course, sometimes people put in the appendix the survey questionnaire and so on, and they explain the instrument. And they explains basically data collections. That you look at, if you do random sampling, you must have the population rate, right? So he mentioned the frame of the SME's population is from data set of the Central Agency of Public Mobilization and Statistics. And this and this, right? And they drawn the sample from this, right? They drawn the sample from this using stratified random sampling. So they explain step by step of what they have done, right? And what they try to do, see, they explain what they try to do, their intentions. They want to have all sectors to be represented, right? And then all regions to be represented proportionately. So they explain how they do this in order to get all the sample and what they get. So these are very, very detailed explanations, right? And when they have explained on this, they provide a little bit of respondent profile, right? And then they look at performance model and so on. And you look at the result had been presented in such a way that they correspond to the model that has been given at the beginning. You look at these are the results that has been given. You look, and I do not know exactly what this means, but those of you who use partial least square structure correlation modeling, I think you know what this means, right? I think you know what this means, right? So they construct this and they explain the result. But then they have all those elements, right? How data are collected, how you measure them, right? So these are the first article that I would like to give you. And I think you should basically, when you start writing, right? And I still remember when I start writing before, I use a lot of time series techniques, unit group test, co-integration, and so on, but I do not know how to structure my writing because there are so many different things to put in. So I take 5 or 10 to 10 articles in whatever area, doesn't matter, but use the same technique. So I put them there and I analyze the way they structure the writing, and then I adopt them and I put in my own way, right? So this is the way that we write, which means by learning from others' writing, right? Now, I share with you, hopefully you can see this, this article on the same thing, and the same as what you try to do, impact of service quality on customer satisfactions in Malaysian airline. Again, a PLS SEM approach, right? A PLS SEM approach. I will show you example from Indonesian authors, right? Which means that even in Indonesia, we have expert, you have expert in PLS SEM. And basically you can learn from the way that they write in facts, right? So again, when I look at this, for examples, for this one, right? Again, they discuss everything related to, they have the model, you look at, they have the model, conceptual models. Always they have this type of models, right? Airline tangible, terminal tangibles, personal services, empathy, airline image. All these things are hypothesized to affect customer satisfactions, and that form the hypothesis. And you do more or less exactly the same thing, right? But then you look, again, when it comes to research methods, again, research instruments, how they measure the constructs, right? They always refer to others. They was adopted, instruments and so on was adopted. How they measure each one of them, they explain in details, right? They explain detail and how they collect data. So this is always three things, right? You have the model, conceptual models, right? And you have research instruments. They explain in detail. Doesn't have to be in point form, but they explain how they operationalize the construct that are used, right? So that they can estimate the model that they have there. And then they have data collections, right? Data collections. In order to achieve the target for this study was identified as the passengers who have traveled with Malaysia Airlines in the last 3 months. So you look at, they tell you exactly the frame of their analysis is the passengers that have traveled with Malaysian Airlines for the past 3 months, right? And then you look at how they determine the sample size and so on, right? So that they have the right numbers for them to run basically. You have those. In fact, you have those. Some articles have those, but then they explain in more detail. And then how they analyze them. They use SPSS, but then they use variance-based PLS SEM. I do not know what exactly mean, but then those in the areas they know exactly, right? Which means that okay, they use this method. So everyone can replicates. And they explain it a bit in terms of the methods here, right? So which is UTA. Some of you also use these methods, right? So for the articles that you are writing. Right? So you look at always all those three explain details for the methods for us to be able to put, and those three are the informations, right, which is needed. Again, I can show you these examples, right, and look. This is more or less again related to what you have done, right? ESQ, e-satisfactions, e-loyalty, of fashion e-retailers. You have halal cosmetic and so on. Always when I see that the same pattern again, when they write their technical model or what they term as conceptual models, right? They explain data collections, survey data collection. They explain the measurements, right? They explain data collection, they explain measurements and so on, right? So this is the way that they structure in terms of the data, right, that they have done. And I want to see the consistency. And you look at here, combinations of, these are very good journal too, for economic and finance, combinations of Malaysian author and Indonesian author. Basically, PLS, SEM, capital structure, and firm financial performance. Look at Malaysian data and so on. Again, when I look at, basically go more or less exactly the same thing, discuss all the variable in there, right? And then you have the model somewhere there, in the articles, right? You have the models there, and they start sample data, how they construct the sample data, right? In detail. And as I mentioned, right, they construct sample data, they provide relevant information, right, and so on. And then how they perform data analysis, right? So these are very important part that we have to learn from what people have done. And these are, as I mentioned, Malaysians and Indonesians authors. And I think this one also, when I took it, exactly the same, basically, that coming from, because these are more or less marketing type of journals, right? That's why it appear in hospitality type of journals and so on, because they try to assess the intention. You look at, does restaurant menu information affect customer attitude and behavior intentions? Some of you, in your article, you look at behavior intentions, intention to purchase halal cosmetic, intention to default on peer-to-peer lending. You look at, always they have this, right? They have this in terms of the method that they use. And again, they create the hypothesis, right? Hypothesis when research design, always data collections, right? They describe, right? Data for this study were collected through interview with customers in a major dining district in Beirut over 4 weekends. Right? I have not seen that you have described in this way in telling, right? And they discuss, because when they say data collections, then from that data collect what you ask people, and from what you ask, how you construct the instruments, a survey instrument, so that you can use for the purpose of data analysis. You look at, they describe what you mean by consumer attitudes and so on. They want to construct and measures and scale and methods of analysis. I like this type of structure, right, when it comes to the methods. So that's why every writing need to conform to the methods that have been, because these are not new, right? Not new, right? It's not something that you have no guidance. It's not new, because other people have used this, but then in different context. Why not we look at the way they write and judge ourselves? Do they write very clearly? If they are written very clearly, why not we put some of them in there and try to learn from them? And from what we learn from them, and we try to understand how should we write, right? So those are things that I would like to mention as initials. Basically initials feedbacks in general that I have with respect to basically your articles that you have written, right? Until data and methods. So Tapak, but let me pause here a little bit. I would like to get feedback from you because I would like to hear what are the reasons, what obstacle that you face, and so on, so that we can discuss. I'll pause a little bit and try to get the feedback from you first, because next things, what I would like to do, just to get volunteer from you, which ones, who volunteer which papers to be looked first, so that we can go through, we can analyze in this context. Now I'm going to try to bring you on how the referees read the articles, right? Because when you know how the referees read the articles, right? How the referees read the article, then you would be able to adopt accordingly or adapt accordingly, so that you can write to fulfill the expectations of the referee, what the referee would look at when they see your article. Now we are in the data and method sections, right? So let me pause for a while here and try to get feedback from you, right? If you have any, right?
Okay, Professor Mansur. Please, participants, do you have any specific feedback or also reasons or obstacles from your previous works?
Try to be as informal as possible. Right? It's not in the classroom where you have professors teaching you. These are mentor. Mentor mean that two-way communications. Right? So yeah, mentoring is different from lecturing. I'm not lecturing you. I'm mentoring you. So that's why I need to understand what you have done and so on. What I know, one of the things that you have before, access to the articles, right? I think, do you need those 5 articles? I can send to Nadia, and those who use PLS, SEM can analyze those articles on how they write, for examples. Right?
I think we can ask one by one, perhaps, Professor, because it is just only 10 or something papers.
No, researchers have to come up, right? One by one become classroom, you know, become classroom type, because I do not want to run this as a classroom.
Please raise your hand.
No one wants to ask anything. None? Okay, if not, who want to go first in terms of the feedback?
Paper. So we know we'll go to the one by one review, Professor.
Yeah, I know, but then I would like to see who have the strong desire to get the feedback first.
Okay. Halo. Ibu Rahmawati or Ibu Anissa. The paper number. Okay.
Prof, Assalamualaikum.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah.
Actually, I'm interested to know about the your review because I'm from accounting. This research about accounting, paper number 43, Prof. We were listening actually.
Okay. Good. Let's start with paper number 43. Of course, from accounting, because accounting disclosure, we are going to look at the methods. Right? So just stay in there for paper number 43, because I have few to ask first before I give my feedback regarding paper number 43. Right now, can you explain little bits for paper number 43 for the benefit of all? What is exactly your objective for paper number 43? Please, you can unmute and then we can discuss. just tell a little bit, inform us a little bit in terms of your objective.
Prof, I think the owner is Husnul Khatimah, Prof. It's not me.
Okay.
You propose some other papers. Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Dr. Iqbal, because I'm interested with this paper.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Ibu Ramawati propose another paper. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I thought you
Not mine actually.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Who's the authors of paper 43? Who is the authors of paper 43?
43 is not about literacy index, right? What literacy?
About what's the title, Prof?
No, I have here why I have difference. Maybe I
Is
know.
that the title or just the issue? Accounting disclosure size.
Oh, I have 243, not 43. I have 243. This one not 43. Sorry. My mistake is 46. I'm not mistaken.
Oh, sorry, paper 46.
Yeah, 46.
I think, could you please, okay.
46
Yeah,
is belong
Rahmawati.
to me, Prof.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Could you please, I think, rename your, for the participant, could you please rename your name with your paper first, number of your paper, and then your name. I think it's better, yeah?
Yes, sorry.
These are paper 46 on disclosure, right?
Okay, Bu Ramawati, it's your paper. Okay.
Okay, yes, Prof. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because I thought it's 43 about accounting disclosure because mine is about the wakaf, but we relate to the size. I'm sorry for the condition about cannot complete the full draft because when I finish in my writing, I just found it a very significant influence my result, Prof. Because in terms of wakaf, there is different treatment for BMT and bank. BMT is Nazir, while for the banking is not Nazir. I thought banking is Nazir. Okay. So my result is very scrub everything. I finished all, but when I realized that small mistake, but I influence all result.
Okay. So
I just realized that when I make this content analysis, so I use the same index, but I'm not quite carefully in terms of because the treatment for Nazir is different in the regulation for BMTs and Islamic banking. The trip different. I never expect that. Because of that, the result is not complete yet. I should change everything, Prof. I used previously. I used make a difference between the BMT disclosure on wakaf, akad wakaf, and bank, because the different the Nazir banking is not Nazir. I think I cannot use that. That item to make measurement. I cannot use the same measurement for between BMT and wakaf, BMT and banking, Prof.
Okay, understood. Yeah.
That happened with my paper.
Yeah, and basically, I think when I look at look in the context of let's say. You have to change, right, in terms of your focus, whether you want to look at bank or you want to look at BMT. So which one that you want to look at moving forward?
Yes, Prof. That when I realized that the small things, but because accounting standard for wakaf is for Nazir. Okay. I use the accounting standard for wakaf as my item, and requirement for wakaf wakaf association. Since I found that Islamic banking is not Nazir, so everything is make me, what should I do with the part of, I cannot make a difference because one is Nazir, one is not Nazir. I confused. What should I do for this condition, Prof? Thank you, Prof.
No, see, you have to look at now, based on what you have done so far, right? What are your hypotheses, right? For example, what your hypothesis, right? Your hypothesis try to look at, because your hypothesis is quite simple. If I try to understand it, is you try to look at whether the disclosure, right? Yes. Whether the disclosure index that you are going to create there depends on the size of, I'm not sure if you look at the bank, it depends on the size of the bank or not. If you look at BMT, whether it will depend on the size of the BMT or not, right?
Okay.
Is that your objective?
My objective, yes, first, yes.
Yeah. So that objective, of course, measuring become part of addressing that objective, right? Measuring become part of the objective, right? But if you want to suggest how to measure disclosure, that one is different thing because you have to look at other type of disclosure index that have been constructed. But now, if your objective, you try to look at, from what we have discussed before we go to the methods, because the methods link directly to the objective, right? Link directly to the objective. Now, before you go to the methods, you have to be clear on your objective first, right? And now let's say you would like to basically construct the index as part of achieving that objective, and that index you call it as Wakaf disclosure, whatever Wakaf disclosure index, or I'm not sure what you call it because these are accounting disclosure. These are accounting concept. So you have the numbers there, and this one will become your outcome or your dependent variables, right? For this number 46 here, the dependent variable. And your size, you want to look at whether they are different between the big BMT or small BMT, right? Now, you have to settle that one objective first before we can go. And if that is your objective, right? If that objective. Now, when it comes to the method, for example, right? When it comes to methods now, you want to see whether the size affect disclosure or not. Let's say these are your objective, right? Size affect disclosure. Now, using the mean and medians, that's not the method to address the objective, right? So you have to get the method that basically at the end, you can come up with the conclusion, yes, size affects disclosure or size does not affect disclosure, right? And you propose the method is ANOVA, right? ANOVA. Now, I'm not against ANOVA, but ANOVA is very basic methods that normally we look at ANOVA in the context of comparing between groups, right? Small bank, small BMT, big MT. So these are tests of equality of mean for normally more than 2 groups, right? Yes. For example, these are ANOVA table. But then there are more richer methods because when you use ANOVA table analysis of variance, for example, right? Your analysis of variance doesn't control for any other variable that affect disclosure, right? And these are people might ask you that, right? Using ANOVA, how you control for other variables that might affect disclosure of the firms, right? So more or less for me, when it comes to this, right? Because the way you construct the data, right? Through content analysis that you have mentioned. So this one is not, maybe I put here wrongly that says survey data, but no, but mostly you construct based on the report that has been done and you look at disclosure, you run content analysis, you get the keywords and so on. And from that, you construct the index, right? So these are your key dependent variables. right? So when I look at this case, it's more important to use least square regressions, for example. So these are regression analysis because you can control for some other factors, right? Rather than using ANOVA alone, because ANOVA, I would say that it may not be sufficient for the good journals because this is very basics, right? People can ask you a lot, right, in terms of why you do not adopt other method that can control for different factors that might affect disclosure, right? So this is the type that I may want to suggest in the context of paper number 46. Get your objective right first, right, before you basically try to proceed. And once with that objective, think of the method that can address objective. Okay? Now, when I look at what you have written, of course, you discuss how you construct basically the disclosure. You discuss the constructions. Okay, you already provide that information. The only thing is that it become later on, right? Once we have that information, the next draft will be how to restructure that information so that your way of describing your descriptions on how you measure disclosure is understood by the readers, right? But then you do not discuss ANOVA, maybe because basically people know ANOVA, analysis of variance, too simple. People just put in table and try to do analysis of variance, and at the end come up with the statistics, right? And then from that statistic, you make conclusions, right? That disclosure depend on size, disclosure is independent from size, right?
Yes.
So those are, but would that be enough? So that enough for good article, right? Okay. So you have to look at that part, right? So for you, maybe you have to look more in terms of data.
Okay, Prof. But it's okay for me to, based on, I explained before that BMT in terms of function from the regulation that BMT is Nazir, but banking is not Nazir. So the function is different. Could I compare both of that?
No, you didn't compare both of them. Maybe you can analyze them separately and try to see different or not between them, right? Okay. I do not know much in this area. I think in terms of accounting, in fact, accounting disclosure, but you want to see whether there are differences in terms of the factors that influence disclosure for bank and for Baitul Mal. So there are those two separate samples. So you have two samples for analysis. Why you want to do them, you must have explanations, right? Why you want to do both of them and so on. Those are need to be justified in your introductions, right? Why you want to do them, right? So those are type of thing. So when I read this, I think my first impressions, your method, even if it can address the objective whether accounting disclosure depends on bank size or not, it may not be sufficient because these are only bivariate, doesn't control for some other factors. But if you want to go into a good journals, you may have to adopt a more elaborated framework like regression analysis. Okay. Right? So which means that you have to look at articles that evaluate determinants of disclosure. It doesn't have to be wakaf disclosure. It can be any disclosure, right? So a lot of work has been done in terms of disclosure, right? The environmental disclosure of the firm, what affect environmental disclosure. So you can see, you can learn from those articles roughly determinants. Of course, your key determinant size, but then the other control variable you can learn from there. Right?
Okay, thank you, Prof.
Okay, so we give paper number 46. Any other papers here that would like to go through? Right? Anyone? No one are interested in your paper, right? On the spot.
From the lowest number, perhaps.
Okay. No, I like paper number 1. I'm not sure. Yeah.
It's Ahmad.
Paper number 1. Who is paper number 1? Paper number 17.
It's Ahmad. Ahmad is 17.
Ahmad 17. Okay. This one's
Salam, bro.
yes, Ahmad. Yeah.
Assalamualaikum.
Salamullah. Yeah.
I'm paper number 17, Prof.
Okay.
Technology diffusion.
Yeah. Now, okay. These are your paper number 17, and I thank you, Ahmad, that you give me introductions and then which I will give feedback later on, because I would like to focus on the method first, and then you give me the Evans the literature review, and I can see. That's why when I give comments there, I don't refer to all papers, right? Because these are the comments that I gave to him before, and he go back and he rewrite things, right? And after and give revised draft introductions and so on, which I will go through because I have gone through with him. And what I like about this, right? He spent so much time. Even literature review, he have 2 drafts, right? First draft, second draft. I have not looked at it yet, how different the first draft, second draft, but that just basically reflect his commitments in terms of writing, because you see maybe there are 2 drafts. These are second alternative draft that he gave me. I will see which one is a better draft, right? Now, when it comes to data, right, you look at data. Now, of course, these are data that has been described. So you describe on how you gather the data, right? And your data is half yearly observations, which means that, I'm not mistaken, half yearly observations mean that for every year you have 2 observations, right?
Yeah,
1
semester,
year,
bro.
yeah, and at the end of the year, right? And then you have for both Sharia business commercial and Sharia business unit. So you have full-fledged Islamic bank and Islamic windows. So that you have described in terms of data, 2021. Right? And why you start 2021? Because you basically want to look at post-crisis. You do not want the crisis to affect all your results. And you mentioned this is a good way, because I'm not commenting on your writing yet, but then it's good to put all this information in, right? You have your data set 2021 to 2020, right? And you explain why 2021, why not before? For example, you explain because you do not want to have a crisis to affect your results. And then your data have 34 Islamic banks, right? 34 Islamic banks. So see, this is a good way of describing the data. But as I mentioned to you, not on the writing yet, but then I'll try to see whether information that has been put in there are there or not, right? And the only thing that basically that basically that you do not put here the sources, right? Where you get it from, you put in there the end here. You get the quarterly report from Islamic Bank provided by. Is this quarterly or for half yearly? I'm not sure of the data that you use because you use quarterly reports. Apply to the derived from the report of Islamic presented in table 1. Lastly, we apply wins rise. Right? So you look at table 1 and so on. You provide table 1. Okay, so there are informations are there, Ahmad, from what you have written, but don't think is need to restructure a little bit in terms of what you put in there, because you already provide table 1 here. You provide table 1 and you explain what are in table 1 of the variables, right? And the only thing maybe that you have to be made clear here, right? You compile your data from 2 different sources, not from 1. Right? But I do not see from the beginning here, you compile, of course you mentioned, but then you mentioned that you compile data, but it's not been seen clear. For example, bank financial data are from the financial statements quarterly report, right? But the adoptions of internet or mobile banking, right, data compiled through questionnaire. So those are 2 sources of data that you use, which I would say that you should put at the beginning, for example, right? We compile the data through both through from the quarterly reports of Islamic banks as provided by OJK, and also through questionnaire. And then you explain what type of data and so on, right? And then you go to the variable measurements. So you have everything here. You have data that you compile, and of course, we can restructure the whole thing here in terms of writing, but information that you have given me here, basically are sufficient in terms of what do you use and so on, type of bank, bank size, right? And what they mean by type of bank and so on. Right? But the only thing that you have to be careful a little bit in terms of the short form that you use, because the short form that you use sometimes is Indonesian language. You have to put in English language. You have to translate them. For example, UUS. I think urusan unit. I'm not sure what it means. I think so, right? Which refer to Windows, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that you have to be clear in terms of this case. So you provide all information there. So your paper by Ahmad number 17 have provided everything and marked concentrations, and you provide the first table, which normally we do, right? Which normally we do, and you will provide descriptive statistic later on when you have those, right? And you propose the methods. Right? You propose the method, of course, as I said, I'm not basically I'm not commenting on the writing yet. I'm commenting whether you have all the information or not, right? So he specified this, right? Logistic model, which in line is curve, right? For example, and in fact, sometimes remember you write for the journal. These are not required to put in because logistics functions look like that. People know what is logistic functions, right? So you don't have to put in there, and you put everything. Right? The only thing that you have to highlight from what you have done here is to explain the based on the, I'm not sure why you have many models. You have to explain what are different between them, and you explain how you estimate them. But the only thing missing that I see from what you have done here, basically, you have not explained basically the expectations. Expectation means that what do you expect beta 1 to be? I'm not sure, maybe you have explained, but I don't see here. It's quite short here. What you expect beta 2 to be? The bank that have higher deposit, are they more likely to adopt e-banking? Right? The bank that have higher number of workers, are they more likely to adopt e-banking? Bigger size bank, are they more likely to adopt banking? So this is a type of thing that you have to explain, right? Unless maybe you have explained on top here, right? Expected relations here. You have to tie them together so that it become more concrete. Right? And you put in here, you predict here, right? Now, see, Ahmad, it's good what you have done here. You have everything that I have mentioned, right? Because when I asked, where's the predictions? You have predictions. Now, the only thing is structure, right? The only thing is structure. Now, I would say from your case, right? I will put the model first, right? Why I put the model first, right? Because by putting the model first and explain the variable later and end with the data compilations, because your data compilation is straightforward, right? From quarterly reports and from questionnaire. The only thing questionnaire, maybe you have to explain a little bit regarding the data, because the one that people will question you, how valid the questionnaire there, whether the bank tell you exactly what they tell you or not, right? So those are basically what you have to look at. So if you put the model first, explain the variable second, and then explain on how you compile the data, right? And provide the descriptive statistic and so on, or give your variable first and explain how you compile the data and go into detail for each variable, right? So I think that one will be better because the expectation already put there. So again, I think you have to look at the article that use this. Sometimes people put data first, sometimes people put model first. But what you have written here, because you already provide predictions, for example, right? You already provide predictions. I think once you provide predictions, basically, you should put the model first, because after you explain the model here, you can tell the next we describe we explain each variable, the data sources together with the expected relation with the adoptions of e-banking. Right? So that's what you can do in terms of this case. So that my view. But these are the examples of the article that would be quite easy for me to edit, in fact, because you have all the information are there, right? The only thing, maybe few things that I may ask regarding the details and so on, but then you have all information are there, right? So these are paper number 17, right? Paper number 17. So that my feedback basically. You can keep the way that you have here, Ahmad, because in second round revisions, when I read, I will suggest how to restructure them, because now I don't read all the detail yet. I just go through, check whether the informations are there that are needed in these sections, and you have all of them, right? And basically, you have logistic, logic regressions, and you estimate them using fully generalized least square. And the only thing that I may want to ask in the future, for example, are there many different ways to estimate panel logics? If there are many other ways that people have used, why do you choose for feasible generalized least square? Right? So these are kind of things that you have to justify further related to the estimation methods. Right? Maybe this would be your preferred models, but other different way to estimate, you are going to use them for robustness checks. So all these things that what we have discussed before, right? We have to put all these things in mind, right? But then you can have this, and these are, as I mentioned, a good example of having all the information which is needed for the purpose of writing the articles. So I have Ahmad raise hands and others raise hands. One more. Yes, raise hand.
Okay. Is there any?
Prof, may I consult that, Prof?
Yeah, sure.
Prof, my data regarding e-banking adoption, I need to collect to do a survey to all the Islamic bank. I have asked my friend who has done before. It took about 2 or 3 months to collect the data. I see that this training will be ended in November.
Yeah.
How about that? Is I still can be continue this paper, since I have to collect the data. Maybe if now is November, maybe I can collect the data, finish the complete the data in December.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, let me ask you, Ahmad, when you collect data, what do you ask bank to say regarding electronic adoption?
I just need I want to know the bank is the Islamic bank, whether regardless uh, Islamic windows or full-fledged, uh, whether in the period of time of my observation they have been adopted internet banking or mobile banking, or maybe both of them they have adopted. This I will use for the dependent variable following the previous studies.
Okay. Now, because your study start in 2011, for example, right? And then you will end,
okay.
yeah, and you end your study in 2020.
Yes.
Right? And basically you have to look at now is mobile banking, right? You look at mobile banking, right? Now, I would say, I'm not sure, you have to look at whether in 2020, for example, right? All Islamic banks or Islamic bank windows, do they have mobile banking or not in 2020? All of them have, because I would foresee that with the fast growing or fast developing technology of fintechs, right? All banks will adopt mobile banking, right? Because I think, let's say in Malaysian context, for example, I'm not sure about International Islamic Bank, but Bank Islam Malaysia, they have mobile banking, which means that you can do transactions through your own mobile without having to go to the branches, right? And those are type of thing. So do you need to ask bank, or do you need to ask bank which year you start to have mobile banking platform? For example, just do one thing, mobile banking platform. And in your mobile banking platform, what customers can do, right? So whether they can do the payments, whether they can deposits, whether they can all in all, right? Deposit, transfer from something else, what type of thing that they can do, and so on. Just try to look at extensiveness of that adoptions of banking, right? Right. So I have more concern about that data, right? Because if you have the situation that adoptions of mobile banking is something kind of a big problem in Indonesia, for example, where many banks have not adopted yet mobile banking, and some few banks adopt mobile banking, that you try to look at what might be the reason some doesn't adopt mobile banking and some adopt mobile banking, then that would be a good research. But then if Islamic bank in Indonesia, almost all of them adopts mobile banking or electronic banking, for example, then I'm not sure what we try to look at in terms of the research problems, right? In terms of research problem, okay? So those are what I'm looking at, right? Now, see, you have 34 banks, right?
Okay.
I think you should go and collect data, right? Once you have data, you should analyze, right? In terms of looking at determinants, and you should write the results. I think, of course, the workshop will end this month, but then your final product will not come yet, right?
Yes.
And I will be ready, don't worry, in terms of continuing, basically provide feedback. When you have the first draft, you still can submit to me. Just mention that you are from this workshop, and if next year, for example, we don't have similar workshop, but then still we want to see the product of this workshop go through some journal article, and that's what we would like to see, and that my objective, and also the KS objective. We want to see complete draft that we can refine, we can enhance, and at the end, we can submit to the journal, right? To the journal. And in fact, from your data set that you will get, right? From your data set that you will get, there might be basically new research questions coming up, right? Where we can use them to write another work, right? So I would say, just go on and collect data, right? Because you have 34 banks, right? Now, see, for me, now I'm anticipating already in terms of what type of data that I'm going to get, right? What type of data that I'm going to get. You are going to have 34 banks. When you get your data back from those 34 banks, for example, and you check the validity of your data again, the website, you come back and you get some banks, right? This is just put in the likelihoods, right? Whether it's there or not, you know more about Indonesian bank. Some banks have not adopted mobile banking yet, right? Which means that for that type of banks or for that type of units, any transaction you have to go to the counters. There's no mobile banking, right? I'm not sure whether at this age we would have banks that have not adopted mobile banking yet, right? And then you have some banks have adopted mobile banking, but at different years. And not only in 2021. Some bank may have adopted in 2021, but then some bank may have adopted later on, right? And you identify the year that they start adopt mobile banking. Right? For example, Bank Islam just adopted in certain years, not from the beginning, right? Maybank may be before Bank Islam adopted mobile banking. So you look at in terms of adoption of mobile banking, right? So when you look in that context, if you have this type of or this characteristic of data set, for example, that would be basically very, very interesting for you to analyze further, because you have all the data set you have collected from annual report and so on, right? The only thing basically right now, the only thing basically right now, you try to look at what are the determinants of adoptions of mobile banking. And I hope you get good data from there and you can perform analysis. So for me, it's okay. For me, it's okay to read after you have complete the first draft, right? But then for those who have complete, then just follow through, because now I'm going to basically teach you on how referees look at your articles and how they attack your article and how they give comment to your article where it's incomplete, so that you can learn to prepare to meet the referees or the editor's expectations. You already have. Now it's about writing, right? So no worry, Ahmad. You still can communicate as always once you're done with your article. But if you have any other article, for example, you want to get feedback, also feel free. Just mention that you are participants from these workshops. Right?
Okay, thank you very much, Prof.
Okay. Sure. Paper number 17, no, not 17, Nur Hidayah, we initially would like to follow, to take global data and cross-country comparisons, but we had difficulties to access the global data, right? So you analyze only Indonesian data. As you mentioned, quality journal usually prefer global data. If there any chance for us to publish in good quality, or are there any ways? Okay, Hidayah, this refer to which paper?
Paper number 19, Prof.
Okay, 19 on that formal Islamic and conventional bank, right?
Yes, Prof.
Innovations. The problem would be data on innovations. Data on performance should not be okay. On other variables should be okay, but only innovations, how to get that innovations data set, right? So why you focus on the Indonesians? Perhaps because you can get measurements of innovations, right? The answer, can you publish in good quality journal by using Indonesian data? The answer, yes. Right? The answer, yes. I think I gave you example before. One study had been done on the changing ownerships of banks in Indonesia. They trace the changing ownership of banks. Of course, with bank, they have domestic private bank, they have foreign bank, they have government-owned bank, and so on. So they are tracing the changing ownership of those banks and how this change ownership affect banks' behavior and bank performance, and that published in JBF. Right? But then why that can be published in JBF, Journal of Banking and Finance? Because they have unique data set. So if you can construct the variable that you want to use, innovations, define them, construct them, and people basically understand what you have done, right? Because these are new dimensions, innovations, something that people are looking at right now, how innovations can affect behavior and so on. So if you can construct that unique data set that may not be available for many other countries, people will be interested right, to publish the article, even you are using your only Indonesian data set, right? But if innovations are not part of your work, for example, right, then the data sets of global data set can be obtained. I think if you are interested in certain topics, again, the communication between us, we can share resources, right? We can share resources, and I have to ask first. Basically, my INSEF, for example, right? Because at INSEF, we promote people to subscribe to our knowledge management center, become subscriber. The fee is not a lot, minimal. The fee per year, right? Per year is not a lot, minimal. But then I have to ask first whether if, for example, you subscribe to our KMC, whether you can get access to data in, let's say, Fish Connect, which provide data for bank globally. Which many students at INSEF use them, right? And in fact, I used to share this data with few of Indonesian researchers. So we can always share, but as long as you have your research objective set and these are data that you need, just ask around, and I'm here, I can help you. But then for your case, because you have one area which is, I would say, quite difficult to get from international data, innovations. Right? If you can get a good construct or good measurement of innovations, right? And good motivations, I think why not? You can still publish in a good journal. Right? So we stop here first, Iqbal, and we come back on the second half. And perhaps second half, I will just go through all of them, right? And I have discussed with Ahmad. You have all informations. Now it's about basically waiting for your data set to do the analysis. Right? So I will take note of that, Ahmad, waiting data set. So I will go through and then read all three sections, right? All three sections that you have, right? Because I will foresee that these are potential articles that can be completed once you have data, and provide feedback in terms of how to restructure the whole thing that you have done. And of course, you have followed my discussions that we have. You have followed my discussions, my feedback on the introductions, and then you provide two versions of literature review. I will provide feedback further. But I think in terms of data method, you have all information but need to be restructured. So let me read first, and then I give you feedback, communicate with you back on how to basically restructure them, right? So that it look nicely and flow well from the first section, introductions, and the second one, literature review, right? So let's take a break first for 15 minutes, and when we come back, I will go through the rest of the papers in light of what I have discussed, right? What is needed in the data sections, right? And I like paper number 1, right? Because when I check paper number 1 against what I have read on those 5 articles, right? On those 5 articles, right? What I have read, paper number 1 have everything, right? Which means you define thing, you put everything in. The only thing is the next step, right? How to restructure to make the flow better, and how to correct the grammars and so on. Right? But then you have all the information, right? So these are type of thing that you look at, right? In data method sections, it's less difficult than literature review and intro, because you are telling what you are doing. You are telling what you have done, right? You have done all these things, so you should be able to tell, right? And the only thing, how you tell, how you structure, how you make the scripts. So those are type of thing that we have to learn. Right? As long as you have all the information, I think it should not be a problem. Okay. So Iqbal, can we take a break for 15 minutes?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, Prof. And for the other participant, you can also prepare your question, yeah, a specific question after this, yeah. Okay. Take your time, your coffee in 15 minutes. Okay. Thank you, Prof. Yeah.
So this may be the same also, right? But then they looked at borrower defaults, and in fact, it's not borrower defaults; it's borrower's default intentions, right? So those are the object of this work, right? And look at objective first. Objective, right? Aim to explore the impact of psychological factors on borrowers' default intentions, right? So those are the keywords. So the thing that I would see in the methods when I see this objective, right? How you measure this? When you say psychological factors, what are they? Right? So which means that there must be sections basically to describe this construct, right? To describe these factors, how you construct them, how you measure them. There must be section, because by reading this, it's not so clear, right? What it means by psychological factors. It's enough to put in introductions, and in fact, you may have introduced what are the dimensions of psychological factors that need to be, that you would like to look at. And you look at default attentions, and you go to theory, and of course I have to say regarding theory, because when it comes to theory, you don't have to be, for example, the 2.1.1 is not theory. Just peer-to-peer lending in Indonesia, right? So it's not theory, in fact. It just provide context in Indonesia regarding peer-to-peer lending. Right? Theory means that explanations, predictions on how the factors influence default intentions, and that theory. What theory say? And that theory, right? The explanations on the influence of independent variables, which in this case I would say psychological factors, on dependent variables, which in this case default intentions. Right? Now, these are general strain theories, because these are just underlying what mechanisms, why during the time of COVID people have intentions to defaults, right? Because during time of COVID, there are a lot of strains, a lot of constraints, a lot of strains, and so on. It can be mental, it can be financials, it can be all kinds of those things, right? Because with those type of strains, then it will affect deviant behavior. So that may be the theoretical predictions that you have there. And you look at previous studies that have been done, right? Now, we look at descriptions. You have model developments. These are your models, right? These are your models, right? Which is good. Research models where you adopt from someone. And that's why I say it's always good to have models somewhere in your articles, and you have hypotheses. But then if you look at all the articles that have shown you, right? When it comes to model development and hypothesis, you have to explain in more details. It's not just enough to state the hypothesis. You have to tell the story a little bit regarding those, right? So that's important for this case. But you have everything. You have hypothesis, and hypothesis embedded here in terms of model development that you have. You have hypothesis, you have those. So this is a good thing that you look at. You have, for example, right? And for me, you can describe the data first, but then the descriptions of data have to be more details, right? The description of data, the measurements of data. Right? And when I look at all other articles, they present the model first, because people can visualize what type of data that you need, so that you can explain the constructions of the model from data compilations. Right? You can say data and variable, for example, and data and constructs. Right? Now, when you explain the data, for example, right, pay attention to the details that you are giving, that you gave, right? Because as I mentioned at the end, right, can people replicate if someone want to replicate, right? Okay, and you said the primary data used in this study were collected through online platform. You said primary data, right? Do you need to mention primary data? It's enough to mention the data required for the present analysis are compiled via online platform, or via online questionnaire, for example. Because you use survey data, just look at the phrase that people use so that you can make it clear, right? Now, the thing that is no details here, right? You said you use random sampling techniques, right? Random sampling technique. Okay. Random sampling technique, right? And then, of course, your populations are Indonesians peer-to-peer lending all over Indonesia, because that is your topic. But then your basically, I'm not sure your sampling techniques is only on Java Islands only or not. Right? And you can make argument later on. Java Island can be considered as representative of the whole populations, as it accounts for 80% of all borrowers in Asia, for example. Right? But then you have to explain, right? What are your frames, right? In terms of this case. Because when I ask, okay, good, random sampling is good, right? That you have done, but you have to give detail a little bit. What are the frame of the populations and where the source of that frame from? Like the study on Egypt, right? They do stratified random sampling. The frames, which mean the list of SMEs, are provided by who? So they have a long thousands and thousands of SMEs there, and from that they randomly select, right? I'm not sure how they randomly select, or do they do systematic sampling, or do they do basically random number generator just to get the samples that the SMEs that they use. So you have to explain in that detail, but I'm not sure in terms of this case, when you say you use random sampling, how you do exactly random sampling? People want to see more details in that case, right? And then when the model is have done first, and then when you go and try to describe the variable, and how you construct the variable, the construction of the variable can be tied to basically the questionnaire that you have. This variable are constructed in this way, this variable, and you have those here, right? But hypotheses need to be longer. You have everything here, right? But this one is not so clear. Of only provide this thing like this is not clear. You have to provide more details, right? For example, the average of your economic pressure, right? So we measure, you have to describe, right? We measure based on two survey questions related to expenditure to income per month and perceived price levels, right? And they give a scale of 5, for example. And from those two, you divide into basically the average of your expenditure. Less than 20% means low pressure, right? More than very high pressure in terms of economic pressure. And the price level, for example, that has been. So you have to explain into more detail. I think you use Wang a lot. Why not you refer to Wang, for example, how he constructs, right? You listen, why do borrowers default on online loans, right? And inquiry of their psychological mechanisms, right? And then this one coming from internet research. Why you not refer to them? Explains in more detail that you borrow heavily from banks in all these things, right? And then from others and so on, that you have inferiority feeling, right? What you do exactly and so on. So which means you have everything that you put in there, but you need to put a more story in there, which means put into the article form. And as I said, you have all elements. You have the measurements, right? You have the measurements, and you have all explanations, and then you have your model here, right? Which is good, right? You have the model, you have the measurements, and so on, right? So that's why I think I like this one, because you have put everything. And the next thing is only to explain in accordance to the format of the journal articles, which you can refer to, right? So this is article number 1, right? I think by article number 1. I don't have the name here, but I have the name in my list. But if the writers, for example, are here, do you have anything to ask related to this article number 1? Because at the end, as I mentioned, always and always, do you have all those 3 informations? Data, the way you compile, in more detail, tell us exactly what you do. And tell us exactly what consideration that you make. Explain exactly the reasons behind what you have done. For example, those are things that we would like to see when we read journal articles. Right? You say random sampling technique, but we don't have frames. Right? We would like to know the frames, right? And you use online platform, right? Now, what do we mean? How you connect online platform with random techniques? Do you send email so that randomly, and how you select respondents randomly based on which frame? So this is missing information that I have here, right? So you have to tell exactly what you do. You may say that you get basically email of all borrowers in peer-to-peer platforms, right? And you send email to all of them. Or you select the respondents randomly from this list, right? And how many you select, I don't have also, right? How many you select, right? Before, at the end, you get 386 respondents at the end. Right? How many you send? How many respond rate? So all these type of things we would like to know, right? We would like to know. Of course, you say when you do random sampling, people would like to know, do you know the size of the populations? Right? Because sample also in terms of statistical analysis, you have to have certain size of the sample too, not just for the purpose of using PLS, SEM. So these are various considerations that you need to put in, right? So anything from the writers, I'm not sure whether the writers are here or not, but anything from the writers. So that's why I prefer to ask which articles that you want to see, and I want to see the writers who are here so that I can discuss those articles first, give you basically the priority first to discuss, right? Otherwise, if I discuss starting from 1, I do not know the writers are here or not.
Yeah.
So anyone, the article they have listed here, and the topic I have listed here, do not look at the paper, but the topic they have looked at, I have discussed Ahmad, technology diffusions, right? And here I have discussed number 1 and number 46, right? So only 3 have discussed so far. Any writers who are here that you would like to see your article discussed, because I have read, so I should be able to give you as priority. 58, maybe Indri, you want to discuss that?
Indri?
Yeah,
yes,
maybe.
Professor.
Yeah.
I would
Okay,
like. I will be grateful if you can send me a feedback.
So your articles is 58, right? And these are on media influencer, right? And what you have done here, right? We look at your objective is basically you try to look at cosmetic purchase intentions, and not of any cosmetic, but halal cosmetic, and you have religiosity in there too, right? And you have media influencer. Right? Now, I will go directly. The other thing I will give you later on in terms of the feedback. Right? You have your conceptual models. Right? You have your conceptual model developed based on PBP, PPB, as I'm not sure what PPB is, maybe you have done before. See, you look at your models. These are your models. These are, see, when you have basically SEM structure equation modeling, these are things that's needed in there, right? So it's basically you have all hypotheses, right? And these social media influences, the attitudes that people have, and you have all these characteristics, right? And how these characteristics affect the attitude toward media influencer, and how religiosity moderate this and affect purchase intentions, right? So you have all this that you want to put in here, right? Now, the only thing, you have the conceptual model in line with what has been done before, right? And you develop the hypothesis, right? And these are details that you have put in. These are hypotheses, which is, again, in line with what people have done, right? In the other article. So the only thing that I need for next step would be a lot very easy for me to look at the writing and the flow of the writing and so on. I don't have to pay attention whether I have enough information or not, because you have provided all these things. And then the mediating effect of religiosity you put in there, right? And you have those, right? So you divide into two. That one acceptable, so very good one that you have done, right? And then you describe your data. Right? You describe your data. I think you follow well, so in terms of the article that have used this, right? The study employed an online questionnaire to examine determining factors of attitude towards social on halal domestic products, right? All the questionnaire items are a standard 5-point Likert scale ranging from, right? So you have all these things was divided into two components, respondent demographic and variable construct, right? So you have all this, right? And variable construct consists of all those 7, right? That you try to look at, right? And then you use purposive sampling. This is you tell exactly what you do, right? Purposive sampling. Okay, it's okay. Purposive sampling, which means you was adopt with the following criteria. You have everything that you have done there. So I would say these are good examples of describing, right? Describing of the model and so on. Maybe perhaps I would say we want to be in line with some other work here, right? After you construct this, for example, data and so on, you have mentioned here, you can discuss in terms of how you estimate, right? Data analysis, create one more section, no problem, right? Or you want to put in the same section, no problem too, if you want to discuss a lot. But these are a good example of what you have done, right? For this. So I don't have much, because when I go and read all those 5 articles, what you have done here all are checks, right? In terms of the standard formats of writing the methods using SEM PLS, right? Or PLS SEM. So you have done the right one. So this can be a good examples. So the next thing, you just need to basically you just need to you just need to get the data and run the regressions. While I'm on my part, I will read again and focus on different things. Focus on the flow, not so much on whether you have information or not, right? So that basically on number 58 is good job that has been done by Indri. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Professor, for your feedback. So if we have collected the data and run the analysis, is it okay if we send the manuscript, the full draft to you, Professor, and get the feedback on your full paper? But I think we not yet distribute the questionnaire. We are still writing the Google form. Maybe I estimate the full article will be finished in December, Prof.
Okay,
Is it
sure.
too late for you?
No, it's not too late. It's the same thing I have mentioned by Ahmad. Our success of this workshop depends on the number of articles that basically will be complete. Of course, I don't expect that by next week you're going to complete the first draft, but then at least our communication will go on. Maybe up until next year, you don't have to worry about those things, right? Because we already have gone through so many steps, and we would like to see the output and the outcomes, right, from your articles, right? So when I read, I would be able, from your part, of course, I will not be able to provide in terms of assessment of the methods or how accurate and so on, because it's not my area. But at least I can help you in terms of the flow, where to put first, where to put second, and so on, right? So that will make your work more readable by at least referees of the journal, right? Referees of the journal. So those are things that you have to look at. And this type of articles, for example, I would say fit well in Journal of Islamic Accounting and Business Research, for example. I fit very well because these are business research type of work, right? So and have religiosity in there, and they look at halalness of the product and so on, right? So as long as you explain those well, then it should be okay, right? Yes, please submit. And I think just keep on communicating, and then. But of course, you have to do together with KNEKS, right? So that they are aware that the effort of having these workshops bear fruit in terms of getting the draft of the articles, right? And after that, maybe you revise one more time, and then we can see where we can submit to the journals, which journal should be submitted to. Okay.
Thank you, Professor. Actually, if you don't mind, I already sent to your email the other manuscript.
Yeah.
It's part of this research project, but it is utilize phenomenological approach, which is a qualitative research, Professor. It has been through a proofreader as well by Enago, but I have sent the manuscript for more than 3 times and it got rejected. Maybe if you have enough time to give the feedback on the manuscript, I will be glad and grateful.
Yeah, as I mentioned to you, these are basically qualitative methods, which I'm not well versed, but I will read and try to see and try to make judgment in terms of whether the issues are interesting or not, and so on, and try to give you one more. And okay, you mentioned that you sent to Inago, right?
Yeah.
For
yeah,
proof.
Professor.
You have to pay a lot for Inago there. When you send to Inago, okay. I will see whether how good they have done in terms of proofread your work, right, by Inago. Okay, and you sent to journal. Which journal you have sent to? Let me get some idea first. I try to look at.
Journal of Marketing Management and Journal Islamic Marketing, AJIMA. And then the third one is Journal of International Marketing. It's about marketing, Professor.
Journal of International Marketing.
Yeah, Professor.
Yeah, okay. So, but then they when they reject, do they provide you feedbacks?
Yeah, actually they took 2 months to get the decision, and 2 weeks they get pending decision, and after that they send rejected and provide various comment, but it's too much comment, so I don't think I'm able to provide all of this comment.
Yeah, because
so I didn't revise the paper.
Those comments should be good because you can read them and try to look at what are things that you can be considered, because this is the way that you improve your work, right? Because if you send to some other journal, if it end up with the same referee, Right? We're afraid that the same referee will, but then the referee see that you have not done anything, just resent to different journal. That will not be good for you too, right? So those are type of things that you have to look at when you send to journal. I'll try to look at, right? And I'm really interested to look at the proofreading of Inago, right? Because Inago is quite active in terms of getting the article to be proofread, right? So try to look at, right? Okay.
Thank you so much, Professor, for your effort on our behalf.
Okay. So I will look at, because I see, I will communicate with you, because these are not article under the workshop, but I will communicate with you. Okay.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay. You look at these are what has been done here. As I mentioned, it's very good in terms of putting all information in, right? And the same thing with the default there, but then for the default, there are more explanation that need to be given, right? Now, but there exists also the articles, I'm not sure, I want to share everything so that you can see what has been done, for examples, right? Let me discuss this one on the mandatory spin-off, right? Because when I look at this one, right, by Zian, names, right? Now, Indonesian Regional Development Bank ready to spin off, right? So when I look at what has been written here, and then all the literature review to voluntary corporate spin-off, the Indonesian Islamic, a study in regional developments bank, right? What people have done. So 2017, people have done, right? And I'm not sure. I have to look at, let's say, Haribowo, where Haribowo published, for example. I don't have that. So I'm not sure whether Zian is here or not, because I have to ask a lot of things in terms of this case, right? Because I'm not sure, right? In terms of the framework you use, right? Because Haribowo here look at Islamic window share asset in 2023 and Islamic window share deposits fund in 2023, right? And then independent variable also Islamic window share asset in 2015, and here you have Islamic window share deposit fund in 2015, right? And then they use the same framework that you have used in these articles. So this is the method that you have adopted, right? And the other one is different, right? They look at efficiency ratio and so on, right? So these are quite, and then you have Arif look at spin-off and so on. Now, the only concern that I have with this article is the methods, right? For example, of separations of into Islamic commercial bank. Let's say these are more or less the same. Also use regressive methods, because the way I read here, you apply, or the authors apply regressive integrated moving average, autoregressive integrated moving average, right? To assess whether they are prepared or not for the spin-off, right? So the key words, right, when you try to come up with the methods, the key words here, preparedness, right? How prepared are they when they come to spin-off, right? From what I'm looking at here, right, your method that you use to try to assess this preparedness is based on the forecast, right? So you are going to come up with forecasting models, right? You are going to come up with forecasting models, and the forecasting model chosen is, if I'm not mistaken, ARIMA models, right? What you have mentioned, and that's what you try to do. You will adopt the forecasting model using ARIMA models, right? Now, if we look clearly into this case, literature review, you write based on the above information, you write literature review and method data. You say that the autoregressive integrated moving average technique is applied to assess feasibility of Islamic business unit to fulfill the criteria of spin-off, right? Where the assets could reach. So, which means that you try to forecast the assets of those Islamic bank units by 2023. Right? Can the asset reach 50% of its parent bank by 2023? Right? Other variable is also investigated, which means you look at bank capital. So these are two key variables that you put in. Right? Referring to the Financial Act number, the paper attempts to predict whether subsidiary of regional could achieve at least 1 trillion capital to meet the minimum capital requirements. So these are the first one, 50%. The second one, 1 trillion capital, right? So that's what you try to do in looking at basically assessing preparedness. So I guess what this article tried to say is that if the predicted capital can meet minimum capital requirements by 2024, right? And if they accounts for 50% or more of the parent bank assets, which means the asset size is 50% or more of parent bank, right? Then they are prepared. Okay. So I see that to be the logical inference from what has been written up, right? Okay. Now, when I see this, I ask myself, right? Is this enough, right? To basically make conclusions, right? That they are ready to spin off, right? Ready to spin off. Or are these two criteria for spin off, which means for these business units to spin off the parent bank now, they must reach 50% first, right? So these are criteria, right? So you want to see whether this can be hit in 2023, right? And then you use the forecasting models, right? Forecasting model to achieve utilize secondary data. You don't have to tell secondary data because rarely people tell in the article because that's understandable. Consisting of asset and capital of 13 Islamic business units of regional development bank. So these are all of them, right? And the data are quarterly from 2011 up to the fourth quarter of 2020. So you have 10 years of data, right? To support and provide relevant explanation of the result, this is adopted in the forms of expert opinion and literature review. Right? Lastly, the compound growth assumption method is used to conduct simulation to predict when Islamic business unit bank could achieve 50%. Right? So I'm not sure why you use, what does it means by compound growth assumptions when you already have the models, right? When you already have the models. Now, the thing is, on this one, okay, you have explained the data that you take the assets, right? Of Islamic, see, there are a lot of things that capital is okay, you take capital of Islamic business unit, you take the assets, but do you take the assets of the wholes, development bank that you are looking at, BPD, right? Bank Pembangunan Daerah, right? So regional development bank, right? Bank Pembangunan Daerah. Do you take data of the total asset because you have to access 50%, right? So you have to forecast for both, not just for BPD, not just for Islamic business unit, but also for BPD, because at the end you can get access. Now, But my main concern is that the method that you use, is that enough to get the right forecast? Because as we know, autoregressive integrated moving average is univariate, right? Univariate analysis. Apply mainly to time series forecasting. And time series forecasting, normally, right, we use them to forecast the variables that are basically are random, right? Like the stock prices, like the exchange rate, where it's very difficult to forecast because their behavior are very difficult to explain, right? So they are highly random, this type of variable. So we use time series, ARIMA. But then in terms of assets, in terms of capital, these two are variables that are not based on the past, but based on decisions, business decisions of the banks, right? Where the way they want to build up the capital, they want to build up the asset depends on so many different things, right? Capitalizations depends on the riskiness. The growth of bank depends on macro growth, for example. So by using autoregressive integrated moving average, you might not get the right or you might not get the good forecast because you have omitted all other factors with the assumptions that the past will predict the future. But that normally applies in the case of financial variables when it comes to time series, right? So that's one thing that you have to look at. So the first one, my first feedback for this one, right, are these two variables that you're going to look at, right, represent preparedness as defined by the rules or as defined by Indonesian governments. Okay, you have to have this, then you can have spin-off. So you have to mention explicitly there, right? You have to mention explicitly there. And the second one, right, like the detail of the law, for example, you can put in footnote, right? For example, this law number 21, you can put in footnote because remember, these are very Indonesians in terms of the sample, but if you want to basically publish international journals, you can put some information in the footnote, doesn't need to be in the text itself, right? So that one thing that you have to ask. Second thing, whether ARIMA is the appropriate forecasting models for bank assets and capitals. So that the second one that you have to look at for this one, right? And the third one for this writing up of the methods here, right? Writing up the methods that you have here, I would say that you have to explain in more details what are the steps, because when it comes to ARIMA method, for example, okay, some explanation must be given, because when it comes to ARIMA method, what type of ARIMA that you use? ARIMA 111, right, which means autoregressive of order 1, integrated of order 1, moving average of order 1, or what type of ARIMA that you use, because there are a whole lot of ARIMA variants there, specifications there, right? So when you say just ARIMA, people do not know for sure, right? And how that ARIMA method basically again linked to the objective. So these are three concerns that I have when I read this data and method. Data is okay because you collect from official source, right? From OJK, which is official source, right? But then I don't have you don't put in the references. Otherwise, I can give you feedback whether those references come from a good journal article or not. Because if I look in this case, I have problem in terms of thinking whether ARIMA is the most appropriate method to forecast Islamic banking asset and business unit in 2023, given the fact that the size of the bank and the capital holding of the bank are business decisions, right? Not something that subject to market force that make them to move very randomly, like the stock market as well as the exchange rates, right? Where in that context, using fundamental based variables, for example, to forecast, it might be difficult. And that's why people look at technical analysis, looking at moving average analysis of stock prices, asset prices, and so on. But these are more of decisions of economic agents that we can have theory that explains what are the factors that affect asset and Islamic business units. Right? Because for me, I would say that it is interesting for sure to know, to answer whether the regional development bank is ready or not. It's good to know that, right? But then more important is that what factors that will make them to be ready, which means what factors that will lead them to have 50% of its parent bank in terms of assets, and what factors that can basically that affect the build up of capital. Is it business cycle, something that the bank have no control, or is it the quality of credit performance of the bank that affect bank capital, for example? So those will be more interesting, right? How to meet that criteria of preparedness, and that what I think in the context of these examples, in terms of this example, methods and data that you have, right? That you have written here, right? So more need to be done in terms of this case. More need to be looked at, right? Looked at in terms of addressing preparedness, right? Preparedness, right? In fact, you can take a look at level of efficiency, for example. They are not efficient yet. There are certain things that need to be done first, because for now, they are basically rely on the parent bank, but then if they are go alone, for example, what would happen to them? So those are type of things that maybe you have to relook back in terms of the model that you use. Okay. So anything from the author, if we have the author for that article number 9, right, looking at preparedness.
Please, other participants.
No one. I think no one's attending, and that's why I like to see you first requesting me to give feedback. If not, I will go through one by one as what I have plans in terms of giving feedback. Right? These are basically the next articles, right? Okay. The next this article is good in terms of, but maybe the topic itself have to be clear in this case, because I asked you before, No Hidayah, can you remind me back what is your dependent variables and what is your objective in terms of looking at this topic? Nur Hidayah not here anymore, or?
Excuse me, Prof. Yeah, I'm right now in California, USA, and it's already very night, and I feel a bit unwell. Can it be postponed first, Prof?
Okay, sure.
Sorry, Prof. Yeah.
You are in California. What you are doing in California?
I'm doing a fellowship, Prof, in the University of California, Riverside, Prof.
Okay, you are at Riverside. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Prof. Sorry about that.
Okay. Let's look next for us to learn from what has been written here. Paper number. These are paper on digital financial inclusions. Right? Digital financial inclusion. Let me share this one. Right? Sulaiman's. Right? This one also had been written and so on. These are also we have a good potential in terms of completing the paper. Right? Now, you discussed the data need in this study is secondary data, and that's why I said you still basically tie to you still tie to your term paper, right, in the class perhaps, and that's why a lot of you mentioned secondary data, and you look at the articles that has been published using quantitative data, for examples, right? Using example, they don't mention quantitative data. You just mentioned this study, right? Obtained from different sources, but you give only one, but you say different sources. So why can't you basically provide everything, right? What are the sources? Right? I think there will not be 1,000 sources that you get the data from, right? When it comes to this, right? So it just mentions what sources. And we said World Bank database. Which database of the World Bank? People would like to know, right? So you have to be more specific regarding your source of data. Are you getting from WDI, right? Or are you getting also for FINDEX, Financial Development Index database, or Governance Index? So which database just mentions, right? So these are the things that you have to put in, right? And then the first one, basically data sources, right? And then the second one that you have to put in here, let me see my notes here. Okay? You said the sample of this study, right? OIC, right? 55 countries, right? People may want to know which country you omit. Of course, they can see it from here, but then it's good for you to tell them, right? It's good for you to tell from which countries, right, that they have. So you have the country there. Now, that's the only thing I get from you in terms of data. And of course, you have the variable here. And you say the model of this study is developed based on previous literature. Of course, yes, previous literature. Which literature? Right? So these are the things that you look at. You have access, you have usage. Right? These are total financial index, and then you have digital financial inclusions that you construct here. Right? And then you have the methods, right? That you to answer the objective, you give this method, right? Now, see, the discussions of the measurements of the variable are not there. Like, people would like to know how you construct the index, right? Of course, these are transitional financial inclusion index. These are two, but how you construct it to make the index, because you call it as the index. What method that you use, right? So you don't explain in terms of the variable that you use. Economic growth is okay, but then there may be a need of a separate sections. Right? The list of variable can be in the appendix. Right? It doesn't have to be in here. Right? The list of the countries can be in the appendix, but then you have to explain more from which data sources, which variable we are getting from which sources, and so on. Now you have everything sources. So why not you say it there? Right? From various sources, which include IMF Financial Access Survey and the Global Bank Global Financial Inclusion Database, ITU, World Bank. You just mentioned from various sources, and you just mentioned which variable from which sources, right? Our key variable and so on, from which sources, how you construct them. So you have to explain in more details in terms of the constructions of your index and database index. Right? That one more important. Growth is okay, the key variable, but then people would like to know how you construct digital financial inclusion, what factors you put in, right? You follow who, for example, in constructing them, what are the method you use? And you use min-max method to construct the index. Do you combine them using principal component analysis? So those are type of things that are not clear yet in your articles, right, Sulaiman? You use principal components, right? If you use principal component, why principal components? If you use basically min-max method to combine as index together with what has been suggested by SIRMA, for example, including Euclidean distance, reverse distance, then you have to tell those, right? And then when you come model developments, more explanation that is needed. How you estimate them, right? Because what I see here, right, you have dynamic panel. Of course, you have to look at, and now you put longer lag for GDP. Why longer lag? Why not just one lag and so on, right? And normally you describe your model first and you describe your estimations method and why you adopt the estimation that you have adopted. So this require more things that need to be added, right? Information are there, more information needed, but then later on I will look at again the structure and the flow of your work, right? I'll give you feedback in terms of the flow of your work regarding paper number 39, right? So more things that need to be done, right? In fact, more explanation that need to be given, and I would say from paper number 39 here, right? We need to restructure a little bit, right? Restructure a little bit. So that what I try to look at on this case, right? But then please proceed, Sulaiman, and collect the data and run the estimation and discuss, right? Because all these things just additional information that need to be put in, that need to, these are enhancements that we need to make for the articles, right? Enhancement that we need to make. Okay. Sulaiman, are you here?
Yes, Prof. Thank you, Prof, for your feedback. Actually, my draft is not finished. It's not finished yet.
So when you expect to get the first draft, Sulaiman?
Maybe next month. Inshallah, Prof. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's okay. No, because right now I have Ahmad that said that his draft will be done next year after 3 months, right? Because he had to collect the data first. That's okay. And I get from Indri, I think if I'm not mistaken, that she will try to complete by the end of the year, December, right? The end of the year, December, right? And now you have, you said that you try to complete basically next month, right? So
yes.
Yeah, so try to put them together next month so that we can discuss, right? The one that you have done, okay? So that's good. You put a target of what you try to complete, right? What you try to complete, because I have to provide feedback for each one of you now because we are moving toward the end. When all the draft coming in, then will be maybe we will communicate with each other in terms of the writing, right? And editing services, for example. I'm not sure whether you want to get from the professional editors or not, like Inago. I'm not sure that one, but then let me take a look at first before we make any other decisions regarding the manuscripts, okay?
Okay, thank you, Prof.
Okay. There are a lot more I would like to give you here. So far, it seemed to be good, the one that I looked at. Now, here, for example, right, when you look at here, from Husnul Khatimah, right, in terms of Wakaf and so on, right? Now, you try to put information in, which is good, right? But then there are certain things that you don't need to put in, right? That you don't need to put in, but you have to explain more, right? You have to explain more. For example, here, right? What has been given here, I don't have the models, right? The model means that you are going to use also, I guess, partial least square SEM, but I don't have the model how you connect them together so that we can see what are the constructs out there, because at the end, I would like to understand how you measure those constructs and how you come up with the measurements, right? But then I do not see it here, right? The first one, again, this one is not needed because these are, again, the term paper in your undergraduate classes. I would say in that way, basically. But if you are not from the undergraduate class, my apology for putting in that way, because we don't tell, we do quantitative research, and quantitative research is a research that use, we don't need to tell. Remember, you are writing for your peers, right? You are not writing for someone that start learning or that want to know about the method. No, you are writing for your peers regarding the issues that you would like to address. Okay? So you don't have to tell them quantitative research method is a method. You don't need to tell them that. Okay? People use econometric. People doesn't define econometric. Econometric. I use econometric analysis in my work. Econometric is. I don't. You never define that. Right? So you don't have to define that. Okay? And the populations of this study, right, of this study is young millennial age populations between 19 to 30 years old living in West Java. Right? So you have, I think I would say millions of them, right? The number of samples. And then you said how many you are going to get will be as many as 261. I'm not sure why 261, right? That you want to put in there. Right? Why 261? Unless, of course, you have done data collections and the end you get this 261. But you have to explain in terms of the data collections that you have done. Right? Of course, data collected, again, see, you put in the form of primary data. Of course, data collect in your primary data, not in the form of primary data. You collect through questionnaire. Right? But you have to explain your questionnaire too. Right? You use Google form. And you say it's distributed to respondents who are deemed worthy and meet the criteria. I'm not sure what criteria that you use now, right? See, you mentioned one thing, but no explanations. What you mean by worthy, right? That are deemed worthy, right? What criteria that you use to view your respondent to be deemed worthy, right? And then you said the questionnaire were distributed to Waqif. Now, are there two sets of questionnaire? Right? Are there two sets of questionnaire? So, and you didn't mention, right? When you send them randomly, how you select them, what are your frame, right? So very important, of course, in primary data set. The primary data set, people are not convinced regarding the way you collect data. People are going to reject right away because data collected at the beginning is wrong, for example. And if you don't tell them, right, they will not know what you are doing exactly, right? Of course, you use Google form. Are you sending through email to all of them with the hope that they will answer? But then when you send email, where's the frame? Population list. And how you select them? Or you send to all of them, right? And you say they are deemed worthy. So it means purposive sampling, not random sampling. So a lot of questions there, right? Because why? Because you don't explain everything that you have done, right? And if you refer back to what we have done, they explain and we can understand, right? And secondary data, library sources, I'm not sure what secondary data that you need for the purpose of estimation because I don't see the models, right? And data we process through SPSS, processed through SPSS, right? And you use path analysis, what that exactly means. That one also have not been described, right? Path analysis, what that exactly means. And the instruments is literacy index wakaf, perceptions of wakaf, and desire, how you get those indicators. So this is what you explain, but you have to explain more and not just giving the point, right? And how they link together in the model. And that one is needed for this case. So I would say that this one is not complete yet because a lot of information have not been given, right? And it's just put in the point form, right? But then when it comes to article, you have to explain, you have to tell the story, not the point form like this, right? A, B, C, and so on. Right? It's better to tell the story if you can tell them. Have longer paragraph, just describe exactly. And you have these indicators variable, but then there's no model here, right? And this the indicators variable, of course, will be based on questionnaire. And that's why it's good to describe the construct together with the questionnaire. So that's what you have to do for number 43. So as I said, I would say number 43 is not complete yet, right? In terms of the writing up of data and methods. Okay. Anything that the author would like to ask if you are here?
Yes, thank you, Prof. For the review. Maybe we can complete the model and the statistical measure for the variables.
Do you have access to article that use the path analysis or not, and look at the way they write? You are not using SEM, right?
Yes.
You are using SEM.
Yeah, I want to use SEM.
Okay. So that's why you have to have access to those articles and look at the way that they are writing. Right?
Yes.
So in that way, I would say basically you have idea. In terms of putting them together, I think if you can get from, let's say, Indri, for example, Indri have a good write up on that, the way the whole thing has been done there, and if you can ask her to share what they have written, so that you can take a look at and try to learn what information that needs to be there and so on, right? Or you can, or if you need, I think I will send the 5 article, the sample there to Nadia, and then you can ask Nadia if you need those articles just to look at how they write the methods, right? Because that one really important, so because I look at many articles we use SEM, and that's why I spend a little bit time to understand SEM and how they write them, right? Of course, in different context, but then the framework is exactly the same. Okay.
Prof, thank you.
So I will send those 5 articles to Nadia after this, and let's see. Okay? And the next one that I would like to give feedback would be on this fintechs improve Muslim participation in zakat during pandemic, and these are extended UTA approach. Again, Liatul, Isra and Rizaldi. I do not know the method. When I see that method, for example, UTAUT, I do not know exactly what it means, right? And you know more about those methods, but then I would guess basically it will be related also to SEM. Right? I'm not sure, because based on the method that you have here. Right? And again, all of you love to do this, right? This study conduct a quantitative research design. Right? You don't need to tell, because the way that you describe the method, people know already whether it be quantitative or not, because you compile data, right? You compile data. So here you look at, you discuss, this one you discuss basically by empirical, which is through reliable study approach in order to elaborate the, I'm not going to look at the English first, right? They should adopt the unified theory of acceptance and use of technology and explore by integrating constructs that were considered relevant as zakat literacy, religiosity, and perceive of digital payment security. So you have 3, right? And in fact, it's good to describe all of them first, right? In general, and go to the literature. Muslim community who pay zakat will be the research population. So that would be many, right? That would be many. And these are your research framework, right? And these are your variables. But then no more than that. You have to develop hypothesis from that research framework somewhere. I'm not sure, maybe hypothesis up there. Okay, you already put hypothesis, right? And in fact, sometimes even that framework, you can push into section 2. And this one, you just discuss how you perform, how you collect data, right? And how you measure each one of them based on the survey that you have done. And then finally, how you estimate, right? In line with the article that I just mentioned. If you do in that way, then it will be complete, right? Because sometimes when I look at structure equation modeling, when they have hypothesis developments, for example, and they end up with the model that they use, right? So which means that based on this hypothesis, we link these 2 hypotheses together using the theoretical model or conceptual model as represented below, right? And then in the next section, you discuss the data for this, right? So sometimes I see people do that. So you have to look at how people have done that. But this one, I would say you have to explain it a little bit more details, right? The community who pays zakat will be researched. Meanwhile, the sample derived from people who have paid zakat online through digital or e-wallet. Does this study use non-probability sampling? So I'm not sure what it means by non-probability sampling, right? Is purposive sampling? You send to only certain people, right? Is it convenient sampling? You send to only people in your areas or in your universities and so on, right? To explore needed and so on. So a lot of things that you have to explain from this case, because I'm afraid, right? I'm afraid that your paper will not be accepted because they are not clear on how you collect data and they are not convinced whether data that you get are reliable. And that's really important thing. And that's why you have to explain fully. And here you said non-probability sampling, but we do not know yet how you send them, for example. What is the frame where you get all those emails to send them through online platform, right? And when you get all emails, it is based on convenience sampling. So all these things basically make people to want to know more and make your work to be suspicious. Of course, you use 5 Likert scale, but then more discussion that need to be needed. And you have to put a lot of things there. Right? See, for me, to put a lot of things and at the end, deciding those things is not relevant can be taken out is a lot easier than not to put anything in here and try to think what should be in there. Information is not enough. It cannot, and that one's more difficult to go back, right? So to go back and forth, right? Once you put everything, you try to put everything in, and when certain thing that you put in is not relevant, it can be taken out. You don't have to go and try to search. I can give you a hint, right? You can take out. But then if you have not put everything, it will ask you go back and try to search for the information, and that take time, right? So that's why, as I mentioned, when you look at data and methods, try to see what need to be in there. The process of collecting data, right? How many you send, how many you get the reply back, right? So all type of those things must be in there. Right? When you send, how you select the respondents, right? Who you send from, let's say you get 3,000 in the list, how you select to get 200. So all type of those things are very important, which I see missing in terms of what you have done, right? In this case, right? So you want to ask anything for this one on final on zakat here? Anyone? No? Or this one, this article belong to I think zakat's intentions. Look, Liatul, if you are here, I'm not sure this is our feedback because I go back to the basics principles. Right? When it comes to data methods, I have to know how you compile data. I have to know how you measure the variables that you want to measure. Of course, different type of article, like the one that use SEM, do a different way. The one that use econometric method, they describe. But then you can follow those standard format. And what are the models and how those models address your research objective, right? So these are basically things that need to be in your data and method sections, right? Data and method sections. Okay. Now, I will open more. Sorry. Let me close this and let me open. I cannot open my. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Anyone want to ask anything? Why I try to open the other journal articles and then the note that I have that I would like to provide feedback to all of you. Right. Anyone else?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Like yeah, the other one that I get basically 63. Right? This one you have to do a lot more. Right? You say that this study used two sources of data, namely primary data with interview and questionnaire. So I'm not sure what are two sources here. You can just mention that you gather data using questionnaire and interview, and the process through Google form. But then I do not know where's the frame and so on. And the secondary data is used by tracing journal. What data from journal that you get? So I'm not sure that one. This one related to this topic on human capital and its effect on something, right? And you use Likert scale, and these are your relationships, right? Which not elaborated. You have human capital, and you say attitude, competencies, education, knowledge, and skills, and then you have halal awareness and how this affect halal pioneers. Right? You have to be more granular, which means you have more detail in your model here. It's not enough to look at this, right? And you have to develop more because under human capital, you have many. You have attitude, you have competencies, you have education, you have knowledge, you have skills, and you have to explain all those constructs. You look at, I have only this. So difficult for me to, even data sources are not explained well, right? So this one, which basically you have to go back and rewrite even in terms of your framework, your models, because if you use, I guess you are going to use SEM also, but then as I mentioned, I will give the article to Bu Nadia, and then if you need those articles, take a look at how they construct structure equation modeling, right? Models, the theoretical model, that where they link everything, and then at the end they apply partial least square SEM to answer. I will read those articles too because I want to see how they discuss the results so that I can give feedback to you, right? On how we should discuss the result when it comes to SEM. Given the fact that there are many of you use SEM, so I have to go to those type of articles and try to read, right? Because it will not be difficult, in fact, in terms of understanding the trends or the components that must be in there when it comes to discussions of result using structural equations modeling, right? So these are not, again, what I have here is not sufficient. And that's why sometimes I say, maybe you submit this one last minute just to put in there first and submit. And that's why one of the reasons. I may be wrong, but then that my hypothesis that I put in there regarding these articles, right? And the final article I would share with you, the one that I go through quite a lot because it's not easy. It takes a lot of time to go through all this. Hijrah intentions, right? I understand the significance worldview, hijrah intentions, because sometimes if you want to write good journal, you have to think of international audience, right? Which means international readers, not only Indonesian readers. Now you have all these things, behavior to belief to hijrah, normative belief to hijrah, control belief to hijrah. You have research method you mentioned, right? One that reflects Islamic, the first step is to carry out theory synthesis process to produce propositions. So I'm not sure. These are not research method. It's just the theoretical that try to synthesize all those things, right? And then you use mixed method. You call it as qualitative phase and quantitative, right? Qualitative phase aim to collect qualitative primary data, open-ended. Qualitative primary data were obtained from limited number of respondents using in-depth interview. In addition, in this phase, literature review and theoretical synthesis. Literature review is not the method, right? Literature review is just literature review, what we have done there. Theoretical just explain the connections, right? Carry out. But then the first phase is to explore, construct, and develop the concept of hijrah intentions. So basically, these are not, you can call the first phase basically, before we construct the hijrah intention measurements. These are the process that you use for the purpose of coming up with the measurements, right? So it's not, it's part of the method to achieve the end. So it in itself doesn't address the objective, right? Because it's just a method that you use. So you can explain, for example, your main method is quantitative, but then for you to arrive at quantifying, right, the quantifications of the hijrah intentions, you go through an interview, right? For us to get the right measurements, you interview. What should be the aspects that I need to measure to capture hijrah intentions, right? So these are things that you look at, but I'm not sure whether this type of work will be able to publish in international journal, because it's quite, I'm not sure, because these are topics that are people interested out there. Because also you have to look at the topic that are people interested out there. But then you have to, you are not using mixed max method. You are using, you analyze data from primary methods where the construction of data, before you run the survey, you get expert opinion on how to construct the measure of hijrah intention, because this may be the first time that you try to look at, right? So that's why you look at indicators, try to get from the experts. These are just the process of that you go through, right? And literature review is not the method. Now you put literature review as part of the methods. No, literature review is not the method. Literature review is just to come up with theories to motivate your work, right? So these are something that you have to understand what is method means exactly. Right? Method is structural equation modeling, right? These are your methods. But how the data, right? How the data are put together, right? Those are really important. How you construct your survey. You want to go further and try to tell that we construct the surveys, and our surveys have gone through basically the first have been validated through interview or focus group with the key respondents, for example. You can tell that how you validate your survey. But these are the main methods that you use, right? So those are basically what you have. Now you have all Bahasa Indonesia, right? That you go through. Just a measurement instrument. Basically, you have all these things, right? For me, I would say basically try to relook back at what you have done here and restructure back, right, in accordance to the method. Because when it said the method, it means that what are the methods that you use in order to address your objective. Okay, you use structural equation modeling based on partial least square, where you have this model. Now, the next thing, how you construct the measures that you need for achieving your research objective. These are the way you construct. So those are the process that you have to describe. So you must restructure this. And I don't think that literature review will be part of this and so on, because you have to focus on how you compile data, how you put things together, right? How you come up with measurements, how you validate your measurements. You have done all those things. So you have to restructure back in terms of data and method that you use, right? So these are basically the one that I would like to give you feedback, right? When it comes to the qualitative methods, right? And as I mentioned, a lot of work has been done. A lot of work you have done. A lot of things, right? And a lot of good things that you have done, right? And you are in the right directions, right? You are in the right directions, right? And you need, as a researcher, we need to search more for information, try to put as much information as we can. As I mentioned, to trim down, to cut information is easy, but then if you don't have enough information, very difficult for us to revise, because I do the editing job too, where the article sent to me and people ask me to edit, right? So I did edit. The most difficult part for editing is when I don't have information, right? So that's why I am so much interested to look at INDRI full draft, right? Because when it comes to editing, we edit based on whatever available given in the draft. We cannot add new information because it's not our area. Editing, look at the structure, look at the English and so on. But then if you have all the information, and that will make it easy, Of course, easy doesn't mean easy, right? It's still difficult, but then it provides us a way of solving the problem in terms of restructuring back where all informations are there, right? So that make copy editing really a lot easier as compared to if I don't have information, right? So I do the editing also and edit them, and so far I think even my student work, if they want to send to journal, the one that I have edited, I think Alhamdulillah have been accepted, but then editing is substantial. But as long as I have information in there, then it can be complete. One paper, it may take 1 month for me to edit, for examples, right? Or minimum 1 week for me to edit the articles. So that what I have done and try to help. But normally I edit article in my area because to be fair, I would not be able to edit article from different areas because different areas may have different criteria, may have different basically way of writing and so on. So I edit mostly articles that use econometric analysis, right? And this is what we have to do. And I think what you have done so far, you are in the right directions. You are putting in, just need to be put, you need to put more, right? You need to put more. Now, and normally there are only three, if I want to tell you as motivation a little bit, right? I already given you one thing, right? I give you three things, right? I want to copy and paste, right? But then let me provide you these motivations, right? In terms of what you have done here, and you have done a good job so far for the 9 weeks. Those of you who have submitted, I'm not sure whether have you read a book that Outliers, right? By Malcolm Gladwell. Right? I'm not mistaken, the book Outliers. Outliers basically refer to exceptional people. Right? Refer to genius. Refer people who are basically at the extremes, right? Like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, right? And many more outliers out there, right? Ultra intelligence. These are the people outliers have very excellent capabilities, right? But then in that book, if you read that book carefully to the end, what he said that, in fact, there's no outliers, right? There's no outliers, right? There's no outliers out there, right? But why they are successful, right? When we look at Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and many others, for example, why they are successful? There are two things they say, right? First one, they spend hours practicing, right? Hours practicing. Right? In fact, there exists a rule. For you to be good, you have to spend 1,000 hours in whatever you do, right? Now, we ask ourselves, have we spent 100,000 hours writing journal articles, right? So these are the conclusions that coming up from the articles, right? 100,000 hours, right? If how many days divide by 24 is 4,166, right? And divided by 365 is about 11 years. Okay? You look at, have you practiced 11 years without stop, without sleeping? That the number of hours needed for you to become good at certain thing, excellent at certain thing. And that the conclusion coming out of the book. And the second one is basically not only hours that you have to put in practicing, okay? Also you have to use the opportunity that you have. Right? Many other people do not have opportunity, right? And you have to understand the fact that the real world, when it comes to opportunity, we don't have equal opportunity. And that's the way the world has been set up. And that's why always we have to be thankful with what we have, because that opportunity has been provided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, right? Opportunity. But once we have the opportunity, we have to use that opportunity. Right? Bill Gates, right? His home close to a university, which is the only university in the United States at that time, or only one or two, that have big mainframe computers. Right? He used the opportunity to go sneak into that at night and stay till morning, do the coding, hours and hours. Right? Beetle, when he got basically offered to perform, even with the low pay, but that opportunity that they had, they used it. Right? And basically the drumming, they played music, long hours. Right? Long hours. What I try to highlight here, they seized that opportunity. Right? And I said, when we start these workshops, I think we have a lot of submissions, but we chose only 71. Right? And you have that opportunity. Right? So that's why we have to exploit that opportunity and so on. And this, according to Malcolm Gladwell, is the one that lead to success. Right? Lead to success. Now, if you read further one other book, right? One other book, right? And this book, right? You read further. And I love to read all this book despite the fact that I'm busy with so many things, because I would like to get motivated basically from this book, try to see what lead to a success of the individuals in whatever we do, right? And of course, all this advice we already have in the Quran, right? But then the second book that I read is Kids, right, by Duckworth, Angela Duckworth. Very interesting book, right? The genius need not be successful, may not be successful in the future, right? May not be successful in the future. So they conduct a study. This is a psychological study, qualitative study that has been done. Field study has been done by a psychologist, right? So very scientific the way that they conduct study, right? But what leads to success? They say grades. What is grades? Determinations. Right? Determinations. Persevere. Right? And from what we have, right? Basically, you want to put istiqamah, consistency. And we have to have those for us to be successful. It's not about who are more intelligent than others, right? And I think for those who do PhD, you know for sure, those who pass PhD may not be the most intelligent persons. Those who pass PhD are the ones that have determinations, that are willing to fail. They are willing to stand up when they fail. Right? They use the failure as one more step to wake up and move closer to the success. And that a person that have grades, right? Have grades. And now look at one, sometimes I like to spend time to look at movie too. Right? And my type of movie, I like the movie that give inspirations, which we can learn. And you ask me Indonesian movie, my number one list, for example, in my number one list, right? So far I have watched quite few, but if you ask me number one list, cannot beat Laskar Pelangi, right? Because the first one, not the second one, the first one, because that gave me tons of motivations on how the one that do not have anything at the end can end up getting scholarship to go to overseas, right? Overseas, right? So how that determination, how that commitment of the teachers, or that one really very inspiring when you take a look at, right? And those who don't have little bit opportunity that they have, but they use them. Right? They use them, and they are determined. Right? And the teachers also determined to help the students and so on, and that would jive well with basically Outliers, the book from Outliers and Grit. And one of the movie I look at, not Indonesians, but Indian movie, not Bollywood. I don't like much Bollywood. It's too basically a lot of fantasy there, unrealistic. I look because I like family type of movie that provide a lot of motivations. This movie is about a young lady want to go into IIT, Indian Institute of Technology. And we know for a fact that to go into that Indian Institute of Technology is extremely difficult. Extremely difficult because they have entrance after entrance. They take cream on the cream. And we know that those who graduate from IIT, whichever IIT, Madras or Delhi, right? If they graduate from IIT, the Silicon Valley, the US, are waiting for them, right, to give them jobs, right? So that movie very interesting, right? And they provide for the success of persons, you must have C. You must have C, and C means that when you do things, concentrate, focus on what you try to do. Right? Concentrate and focus. And now we are in the writing. Concentrate on the writing and focus. And then the second one, understands. Right? Understand. Okay? Which means try to understand the way people write. Right? Try to understand how many different ways that people have written and so on. Right? And so on. Right? And then after that, you practice. Right? And that's why I like what Ahmad had done. He gave me two versions of literature review, right? Because he concentrate on writing and he try to practice. Like you can practice in many different ways. Should I do this way? Should I do that way? And so on. And you start writing and practice. And that one will give you perfections. And we call this one as cups. If you have these cups, right, you can be successful. And that's why practice is very important. And that's why writing just to meet the deadline doesn't work, right? Because you have to start from the beginning, spend time, try to understand what we try to do, what we need, and try to practice writing. And we may not be perfect, but then as what many people say, practice make perfect, right? Or practice will improve you because no one can be perfect, right? I don't believe in perfections, but then practice will improve you, right? So those are type of things that I really, when I look at what you have done, I think that I have to share these three things because these are very, very interesting part. I can share you Laskar Pelangi too, how I like that movie because of the determinations, because of perseverance, because of even small bit opportunity, they try to use them, and at the end, they get scholarship to go to overseas, right? So there are a lot of stories of success, and we have better opportunity, right? We have better opportunity, right? So that's why with this better opportunity and with hard work, nothing is impossible, I would say, right? So Dr. Iqbal, let me stop here, and if there is anything, I will be happy to address your questions.
Okay, thank you, Professor Mansur. Is there anything or something to ask or feedback or comments? Participant, please raise your hand.
Yeah, I would send a PowerPoint as well as the 5 articles, right, that I use as example to Nadia, and then Nadia can share with the group. Hopefully, it will be a benefit.
Okay, thank you. I think it looks like we have covered our question, Professor.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Mansur, for your time and also for your dedication. Yeah, we learned a lot from you. Appreciate your serious efforts, one by one, the paper, reviewing the paper, our common mistakes in doing research and also writing publication. Hopefully, it new insight, new comment, knowledge, skills, and can be beneficial for us, yeah, and for our future endeavor as a researcher, as a writer, and can publish in international and reputable journal. I think I will not resume the presentation, Professor Mansur. We have 1 minute, perhaps, for closing statement before we close the workshop.
From me or from
you?
Okay,
you have
from me. Now, thanks. We are closing to the end, and we do not have the full draft yet for us to go to week number 10, right? But that's okay because there are a lot of feedback that I have to give to you, especially literature review, right? And the next one, right, I will basically dissect one by one, which means that today I just focus on whether we have the information needed in the articles or not, right? The information, for example, in the introductions, do we have information needed, right? In the literature review, right, we have looked at before, and today in data and method section, we look at whether we have information needed or not. So the next one, we are going to take that information, right, and we are going to decompose first, separate them, and then we are going to compose back by putting in, by improving the flow, right? So these are the first revision we should have, right? The first draft must have all information, and then the revisions you decompose, and then let's think of how to compose back, right? Without referring to what you have done there, right? So that we have a good flow of write-up, and that's what I'm going to do in week number 10, right? But if we have a full draft, then I will use that one also as an example, right? But then my discussion will not be just on data and method, but will be on all sections that has been submitted. I will give preference to those articles that have submitted the task up until this point, right? For example, I will discuss the one that submit the task with the result first, and then go to the one that more complete. I will give that priority, given the time that we have, right? And regarding the Indri article, I will try to read, because that one is not under this workshop, but I will try to read that full draft and try to see what needs to be done more to enhance the chance of get accepted. Okay, thanks, Dr. Iqbal.
Thanks, Professor Mansur. I think we should, and also thanks everyone. Please finish our workshop by saying Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin, and doa kafaratul majlis. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
The next session of workshop, ya. Thank you. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we should leave, ya.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Mr. Iqbal.
Ya.
Enggak lah, ya begitulah pokoknya Mas Dio. Ini Mas Adi di kantor lah atau masih WFH Mas kalau lihat? Kita udah ke kantor sih so far seminggu sekali ya. Nanti tunggu update-nya lagi. Soalnya kan PPKM udah nggak ada nih, udah level 0. Iya, udah level 1 kalau nggak salah ya. Iya.